Unless they do something really creative, so that it gives them I think they would understand.
No, actually, I wasn't.
That's what I feel. I would agree.
We're going to go ahead and get started here.
I saw your name.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the February 6th, 2024 West Goshen Township Board of Supervisors meeting. And we'll begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Welcome, welcome. I'll begin by announcing that this meeting may be audio and video recorded by third parties, just so everybody's aware. And we'll begin the meeting tonight with public comment. And this is for anybody who has a comment about anything township related that's not on tonight's agenda. Are there any comments from the public? Yes, Mr. Gold.
Three quick comments. We approved the AV station ordinance conditionally at the last, maybe second to last meeting. Can I find a copy of that somewhere posted?
Well, that's not accurate. It wasn't approved. The board authorized it to go through the process, which is a review under the municipality's planning code. It goes to the state, it goes to the county planning commission and our planning commission for review, and it was posted with the materials for the January 24th board meeting.
Okay.
So it is available on our website.
Okay. So it comes back around as officially approved when?
So it goes through a review process as mandated by state law, where it will get reviewed by our planning commission, the county planning commission, and then we'll come back before the Board of Supervisors for a public meeting. But the County Planning Commission has 30 days in which to issue comments, and I think it was just sent up on January 25th, so they have until the end of February to issue comments.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And then the RFP, the request for proposal for solar panels on Building 3 roof, is that available to the public?
It's all available on PennBid. So we advertise everything through PennBid, and that's a public bidding website. So if you go on PennBid and you search for it, you should be able to find those documents. So it's all on PennBid.
Okay. And then one funny item of feedback. I explained to my Harley friend that Adams was in here, and we're going to move into Spaz Beverage. But he emphasized the fact that motorcycles are going to electric. And my friend has maybe 10 Harleys, and he laughed. He said, do you realize they go 0 to 60 in 3 seconds? And most EV cars go 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. So I'm trying to imagine a community where everybody can go 0 to 60 in 3 seconds on a busy roads as it is. And I thought that was pretty funny, so I thought I'd share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moe. Any other comments from the public? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to agenda item number 4. I understand we have a special guest with us tonight, presentation from Alyssa Nichter, who is pursuing the Gold Award project through the Girl Scouts. Chris, did you want to introduce us a little bit more?
Yes, Madam Chair. So before the Board of Supervisors this evening is Alyssa Nichter. She is a student at Henderson High School and a senior Girl Scout. Ms. Nichter is currently working on her Girl Scout Gold Award, and for her project, she is proposing to paint address numbers for the houses in her neighborhood in order to aid emergency personnel. I hope I didn't steal too much of your thunder. I'd like to note for the board that the Homeowners Association for where she lived has approved this project. While there's not necessarily any approval that's needed by the board this evening, I thought it was good since it involves the township roads for the board to be aware of what's occurring.
Excellent.
She did. Ms. Nichter also coordinated with Andrea Testa, our emergency management coordinator for this project as well.
Well, welcome.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Nichter, and this is my Gold Award project proposal. So as previously stated, I am a 9th grade Henderson High School student and a senior Girl Scout. A few things you might like to know about me is I'm a volunteer at the SPCA Animal Shelter and has recently got a certificate for Summer Camp Champion. I enjoy performing shows at my local theaters and school. I work children's shows as an intern at Salt Performing Arts, and I'm a certified babysitter. I am currently working on my Girl Scout Gold Award, which is the highest award in Girl Scouting, and only 5.4% of eligible Girl Scouts actually earn this award. My Gold Award project will be a beneficial addition to my neighborhood. Its purpose is intended for emergency personnel, such as ambulances and firefighters, to locate the addresses on homes. The addresses that are physically located on a home or mailbox can be poorly lit, damaged, faded, and even covered by something such as a bush. Duplicating the address on the curb provides a backup in case the other addresses are not visible or hard to see. For similar reasons, the freshly painted addresses will also be helpful to delivery personnel, such as UPS, Amazon, or FedEx. Thank you all for listening and taking my proposal into consideration, and please feel free to let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. I have a question. How did you get this idea?
So I had actually looked at a few recently done projects, and this one caught my eye because I have noticed in the past about the curbs painted in my neighborhood. So we have a few people come around every once in a while who offer to pay them for a small fee, but it's very rare and people usually don't want to pay the fee. And so I just thought it would be a nice addition to the neighborhood.
So you're going to do it for them on your own time. I think that's great. Any other questions for Alyssa?
I have a question. Did you have any opposition from any of the residents to paint their, curb?
No, so we actually did not have to communicate too much with the residents yet. I already got it approved by the Homeowners Association, and then the only thing that I could see coming up is, as I said, some of them are covered by a bush. So So I would be able to communicate with the owners of the home to act like maybe trim their bush. But we have a pretty friendly neighborhood, so I think that would be okay.
And when do you find out if you won the gold award?
Maybe 6 weeks after that.
So 6 weeks, yeah.
Wow, that's really exciting. So you have to let us know.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a great idea.
I actually have a question.
Oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So the actual application of the number, are you going to use a stencil, so it's like a black paint on a white background and it's uniform?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So actually my advisor is my uncle, and he owns Pro Painters Company. So he is providing me with all the knowledge and the supplies that I'll need. So I will be using stencils for all the numbers. I will start with a taped out box for the white, and then I'll do stencils for the black paint and let that dry. And it should last about 5 to 6 years.
Okay, and then one other question. So I know you said you had a homeowners association approval, and that you will, so will you actually tell the individual homeowner that you intend to do it before applying it?
So there will be, we have a Facebook page for our neighborhood, so notifications will be sent out and approved.
Okay. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Not a question, just a comment. I just want to commend you on doing this, and thank you very much for doing this community service. Girl Scouts is a great organization. I went to the Boy Scouts myself, and earned Eagle Scout, and 2 bronze palms and Order of the Arrow. So I can appreciate how valuable the organization is, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, as a father of an Eagle Scout, I know how much work it goes into getting to the level that you are. I really commend you for that. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, since he's here, I asked Mark to be in attendance since this is involving some of our township residents. I want to see, Mark, do you have any questions for Alyssa?
No, I think it's a great idea too. If you need any help, just reach out.
All right, good luck. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 5, discussion of applications before the zoning hearing board. I understand there are 2 applications. The first application is 205 Carter Drive by the applicant BT Carter Drive LLC and West Goshen Shopping Center and Capital Enterprises. Shelby, did you want to introduce this?
Yes, Madam Chair. Before the Board of Supervisors this evening are 2 applications for the zoning hearing board. Both applications are scheduled for February 26th, 2024. The first, 205 Carter Drive, the applicant is BT Carter Drive LLC. This application is associated with the construction of a proposed hotel at 205 Carter Drive in the I-2 Light Industrial District. This project was previously discussed with the board during a review of their proposed letter of map amendment, which was subsequently approved by FEMA. The applicant is proposing to demolish 2 existing buildings and construct a 3-story, 200-suite hotel with associated parking and stormwater management facilities. The following relief is being sought. Variances from Section 8438B12C to permit the installation of a stormwater management basin and associated drainage structures, portion of the access drive and retaining wall within the 100-foot rear yard buffer required where a rear yard is contiguous to the residential use. Section 8499D to permit the installation of an above-ground stormwater management basin within 50 feet of the top of bank of Goose Creek, and Section 8454F to allow for the installation of a portion of the parking lot with associated drive aisle with man-made prohibitive slopes. They are also seeking two special exceptions. The first from Section 8454G2 for the installation of storm sewer and prohibitive steep slopes, specifically the installation of a 30-inch HDPE pipe, 48-inch HDPE pipe, and stormwater manhole, subject to the approval by all regulatory agencies having jurisdiction. And lastly, Section 8499F3 for the installation of storm sewer in the proposed floodplain, specifically the installation of a 30-inch RCP pipe and wall. Please be advised that the applicant amended their application to withdraw the request from relief from Section 8438B5 pertaining to setbacks.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, just to add on to what Shelby provided, just so the board is aware, I did get contacted by the borough manager for Westchester Borough for a copy of the application. I did provide it to them since there is multiple jurisdictions involved.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So do we want to take these then one by one? Is there a representative by the applicant tonight? Hi.
Good evening, everyone. Allison Zaro from Riley River Hellman Color Greco. I'm here this evening on behalf of BT Carter Drive LLC, which is the owner of the property at 205 Carter Drive. That is a BT Investments entity. They've owned this property for several years. And just to orient the board, there's an aerial on the screen which is showing you the existing condition of the site. This particular property is essentially a flag lot. There's a 50-foot access strip that provides the only access to the property from Carter Drive, which is sort of cut off on this plan, but it's sort of in your lower left-hand corner next to the building on the left side of the screen. You'll see that there's an existing building that had been used historically as a flex building, industrial building. It's approximately 44,000 square feet. That building would be demolished. There's an existing parking field that serves the building essentially to the north and west. And then behind that, and the reason I pointed out is that it's somewhat hard to see on this plan, but there's sort of a darker blob in the middle above the parking area to the north. That is an existing stormwater management basin. And if there is a laser pointer, I believe it. Yeah. So up here, there is an existing stormwater management basin that exists on the site today. So as summarized in the application, I'll note first that the property is zoned I-2 district. The I-2 district does allow for the construction of a hotel by right in the district. We had actually filed land development plans for this project back in 2022, and as noted earlier, the proposed plan, which I'll jump to in a minute, will requires a letter of MAC revision from FEMA. So this particular site had an estimated floodplain on it. So BET's engineers, T&M Associates, actually did a calculated floodplain study on the property and determined the location of the existing calculated floodplain. And they've also obtained a conditional letter of MAC revision, which will allow them to do fill on the site for the proposed project. So if we flip to the proposed aerial, I can give you information about the project and then why we're seeking the zoning relief.
Actually, can I ask some questions on the existing
Sure, Sean.
condition? So on the existing condition, is the floodplain, has it created any wetlands on that northwest side of the property at all, or is it not wetlands?
I have Keith Lieberman from T&M Associates here, and I'll ask him to come up just to answer your question.
Yeah.
One second, just want to confirm. I need to get a full confirmation.
Hi, Keith Lieberman from T&M Associates representing BET. There are no wetlands. We had a delineation performed on the site. There is a water course along the northern boundary of the site, and obviously Goose Creek, but wetlands, no. There's no, the drainage area did not create an environment for wetlands.
And one other question about the existing conditions, has any of the most recent storms in the last couple of years created any flooding on the property?
No. In fact, I personally went there after Hurricane Ida. As you recall, I was at 820 Washington, also representing that client. Happened to be in the area. I went to both sites to witness, and I personally witnessed no flooding. As a matter of fact, I walked over near Goose Creek. There's a little old bridge that's back in there, and just walked out onto it. I could see where the high water mark was in Goose Creek, and it was well below the top of the bank.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Madam Chair. Regarding the installation of the above ground storm management basin within 50 feet at the top of the bank of Goose Creek, Do you have any pictures of that? I mean, is it going to be?
Yeah, so the next slide is actually our proposed conditions.
Oh,
and
let's
those are
go
the
ahead.
next.
Yeah.
There should be, yes, there we go. So proposed conditions are on this slide. Again, the access point is sort of in the lower left-hand corner of the plan, so that obviously remains the same. And then we are proposing a 3-story, 200-suite hotel over one level of parking. So that's why you're seeing, striping, but this is really also the building footprint as well. And then there's additional surface parking generally in line with the areas that exist today. We're also proposing a secondary access to connect to the property to the north. The property to the north is the Edge, which is the existing student housing project. That's also owned by BET. So generally, a lot of the relief I'm going to be talking about, the most affected neighbor or the closest neighbor to this is actually also BET themselves. But the reason we're proposing this second access is because I mentioned earlier, this property is essentially a flag lot with a 50-foot wide strip. So in the event of an emergency, we thought it was good planning to allow for that connection. It gives a second access point and outlet in the event that that main access would be blocked to the property. So in terms of your question, right now the existing stormwater basin is in the back of the site, and BET would be proposing modifications to bring that up to standards, make it work for the new development, but it generally would be in the same location. And then we have a third plan that actually shows in more detail the existing floodplain and the calculated floodplain. So this particular plan, which maybe isn't the easiest to see on the screen, but Goose Creek is generally on your eastern side or right side of the plan. This shows you more clearly the full flag that goes out to Carter Drive, and then the access to the site. This would be the new connection to the Edge, stormwater management basin in this area in the back, and then obviously building and parking. So there are two different colored lines on this plan that represent floodplain. The purple line is the existing calculated floodplain as approved by FEMA. And there is a blue line that runs essentially in this area for the driveway connection and around the new stormwater management basin. And that is that would be the proposed floodplain line based on the CLOMAR or the fill for the site. So our improvements in general, there are some small improvements. For instance, I know you were specifically asking about the stormwater basin within 50 feet of top of bank. Under today's conditions and under proposed conditions, our stormwater basin is essentially out of it. Under existing conditions, we're still talking about a de minimis portion of it essentially in this area. The majority of it is out of that 50-foot range. And I can certainly have Mr. Lieberman give you more detail if you have specific questions about that.
I have a question that might help them. So is all the relief that was summarized based on the floodplain as it is today, or the floodplain after you do what's proposed in the flood?
As it is today. As it is today.
So do you not need the relief if you go through and do what the plumber requires you to do?
Correct. So
You don't need any of the relief?
So
We will need some relief, to clarify. Yes. Not for the stormwater.
not
basin
for
itself.
not for the stormwater basin itself.
No, I'm just trying, I think it would be helpful for the board to understand on this summary, which of these are still needed after the plumber
Yes, so I
work
can go
is
through
done.
that next. Yeah. So the first item that we're requesting a variance from actually does not relate to the floodplain. So your ordinance in the I-2 district requires a 100-foot rear yard and rear yard buffer if you are abutting a residential district or residential use. So nothing to do with floodplain or steep slopes. We don't abut a residential district. I mean, the Edge is also zoned I-2, but student housing is technically a residential use, so that would require the 100-foot buffer. So our first variance request is to allow for the stormwater management basin to be in that buffer as well as the access connection, and there is a retaining wall proposed as well. in that area. And as I noted earlier, the existing stormwater basin is there today. So this isn't a pristine buffer that exists that we would be completely, taking down anyway, so to speak. But that's our first request.
Okay, so I have a couple
Yeah.
questions. I don't know that I'm completely understanding. So there's the first stormwater basin that exists today.
Yes, and that would be modified.
Modified
expanded.
how? Made larger?
It's going to be modified. It's going to be modernized to meet all the new NPDES requirements. So there's an existing basin there today, but we need to modify for our development.
And it's still going to be within the boundaries of the floodplain after the...
It's going to be generally in the same exact location it is today. It's going to be slightly larger.
Because with the Clomar lines, and it's kind of difficult to see because there's a blue one and a purple one,
Okay,
it doesn't look that different to me.
Yeah, so let me try to explain. So FEMA maps the whole site as floodplain today, but their model is very old and it's very rough model. So what we do is we do a full model of the stream. We use FEMA's flow data, we do cross-sections, we model it. That gave us the purple line. Okay. Then we do our improvements, which involves some fill within the purple line. And then when we're done doing that fill, it creates the blue line, which becomes the new FEMA floodplain line. So when we're done, the blue line will be the floodplain.
The boundary,
Yeah.
the floodplain boundary, okay.
Did that help clarify?
Show the blue line. I just see a blue, like,
It sort of blends together.
It's
Well,
close.
it
I
looks
mean,
really close.
if I can, okay. So you can see the purple lines right here, and then the blue and the purple. They're very close together because the only change is a result of some fill material. So where the basin is, because our basin is very, very similar to the existing basin, so the amount of excavation and fill, right, it's only modifying it ever so slightly there. So it's very hard to see on.
So all the work that you did with FEMA created the purple line anyway, you've already done
Correct.
that work.
Everything's been approved by FEMA.
Yeah.
So they've approved both lines.
Okay.
Okay, they recognize that if no development is ever done, the purple line will become the official FEMA line. Once we do all the development shown on this plan, the blue line will now become the official FEMA line. There's a whole process we'll go through post-development to file that with FEMA, and FEMA will update the maps based on this. The place I can show the most obvious change is down here. So you can see the purple is here, okay, then the blue comes around and wraps here as we put in this driveway connection to the edge of the site. So from our hotel site up to the apartments up here, by installing that, you can see the blue line, I'm tracing the blue line here, becomes the new floodplain line, whereas today, you can see the purple is there.
I understand. I'm just wondering why it becomes that way. Maybe these are all technical questions, but is the access drive then within a floodplain?
Yes, this would be installed, well, it will no longer be in floodplain once everything is completed, right? So what the blue line ultimately become the floodplain line, this will no longer be in the floodplain.
Okay.
If the purple were to be considered the floodplain line today, which it essentially is based on our calculations and FEMA's review and concurrence with our calculations, we will be constructing this in a portion of what is determined by calculation to be floodplain today. When we're done our construction, it'll be outside the floodplain.
And Keith, to further clarify, because we're putting fill and have that approval from FEMA to put in fill, at the point that you put in that fill and get approval from FEMA for the letter of map provision, even your improvements will no longer be in a floodplain.
Correct.
Not as simple as just putting it in at current grade or whatever you want to call it.
Correct.
well, the basin still will be, but the road won't.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So there's no access drive now?
Correct.
There's no road there, and you want to connect this property to the edge?
Yes.
Correct.
Essentially,
Would-
to create a second.
Yeah, a second means of egress, so that for emergency purposes.
Emergency purposes,
Yes.
or is this like going to be a heavily traversed road between?
Well, essentially emergency purposes, but I don't mean, the owner is the same owner of both properties. I don't know if they want to leave it open as a second means of egress for the people that are staying there. But the primary reason is for emergency purposes.
With the extended access area, is there going to be a sidewalk connecting
To the edge.
to the edge?
Yeah, yes, there's a sidewalk connecting alongside.
After your stormwater engineering practices are initiated, what is your percentage of impervious cover going to be compared to what it is today?
The impervious, that's a really good question. I don't have that at my fingertips right now.
I'm assuming you're improving it, making, or decreasing the
I'd have to
impervious.
refer to the zoning table. I don't know if that's existing on here. Yeah, 31% is, 50% is permissible on lot coverage. We have 31% lot coverage. I don't know what the exact, do you know what the coverage is today?
Peter Cleland with BET Investments. I would say, not having the calculations, it's probably close to a wash because I may have a laser. In this area of the property today, there's paved parking area that's being removed. We're reconstructing this, so it's probably close to a wash for what's there today. But as Keith mentioned, the basin is being reconstructed to bring it up to your current stormwater outfall requirements. So there will be a stormwater improvement, regardless of any decrease or in the impervious area.
Okay. So then where will the retaining wall be located?
I can show you. The retaining wall is here and here on either side of it. So it's a low-lying area. In order to construct the drive across there, there's a retaining wall.
So the real question and what you're seeking relief from is the fact that it sort of encroaches within the 100-foot rear yard buffer of a residential use, which the residential use is the edge.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Just on that, when you look at it on Google Maps or Jessica Views, you can see that the edge has parking right up to this, where the driveway access is anyway. It's not
Where?
Right there. That's where the road will be.
In across this area. This is the existing stormwater basin.
So the stormwater base will fill that space there, as far as I understand it, and the road is only what's the new
Driveway
connection.
comes across
Yeah, the
here.
driveway, yeah.
This is the part that was being removed from the closer to the creek area. Just from a terminology standpoint, I think what probably would have been helpful, we will be crossing the floodplain with that new driveway. That's, the fill will go in, so we will be crossing of the floodplain. That's why that line moves.
Okay. Where's the water course located? You said there's a water course and then Goose Creek. They're two separate things?
Yeah, Goose Creek's right here. And then there's a small one that just runs parallel to the property.
Okay.
So I also see on the detailed improvements that there's a further stormwater basin underground, underground stormwater management basin.
It's way above ground, isn't it?
It's right there, yeah.
Under where the existing parking lot is.
So that is required to meet the our current requirements for best management practices in addition to the above ground basin, correct?
That's correct.
Correct.
So this is a question for the engineer, our engineer. So I'm assuming that these improvements will be a substantial improvement over the current stormwater management practices for this particular property. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions on this question?
I have one question regarding the above ground. Is that going to be enclosed, the above ground stormwater area?
The stormwater basin?
Basin,
Like
yeah.
with a fence?
Yeah, or something.
I don't believe you show it on the plan currently, no.
Okay. Is it required to have fence in the basin? Around the above ground?
Then depending on the slope of the depth,
Okay.
but it's not at that point yet.
Okay.
They're going to come.
Okay, so does the board want to take any position on this variance request? Neutral? Okay, you're neutral, so that's fine. All right, so you can proceed to the next variance request.
Good luck.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, I mean, don't
She's
have
saying
to.
first one.
Oh, okay, oh. I didn't start.
Not so fast.
Felt pretty good.
She's done it.
I didn't, when you
The
said your
100
next
foot,
variance, I
right?
didn't know.
Yeah.
if it was application.
So number 2.
Yeah, so number 2 is more specific to the floodplain that we were talking about. So that's actually the one we were just touching on, which is the no new construction within top of bank. And as we mentioned, that's a small area of the stormwater management basin next to Goose Creek that's within 50 feet, and some related stormwater piping that goes to Goose Creek. But again, that was what we were just focused on that area on the plan, so.
Okay, so it's going to be 29.5 feet from the bank?
Yeah. Yeah, so that would be helpful. So essentially, today, the floodplain line, you'll see it along there.
This is the 50-foot
Yeah.
line here. This is kind of the edge of the berm over here. I'll allow the engineer to justify why they picked that line right there as the measurement at the top of the berm. I mean, in my mind, the berm is more over here, probably more in the 45-foot range. But it's this little grading that's occurring in this corner that they're listing that variance based on.
And is that, sorry to jump in, but is the existing basin already in violation of that section? Is it sort of an existing non-conforming condition?
Well, the ordinance section we're talking about specific to this says no new construction or development.
Right, but if you were to, if the
Yeah.
basin is considered, I mean,
Yeah.
if you were to read, is the existing basin still in that same 50-foot?
Ms. Kim, I think we're expanding the basis slightly there.
Okay,
and
but I
we're
mean,
we're
but the
creating
point
as
is that it's
conditional.
already sort of in
Yes.
violation in terms of how close it is to Township.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
okay, right, okay, yeah. That's just one to start.
Does anyone have any issues or problems with this? No? Neutral? Okay. So moving on to the next request, which is, yeah, go ahead.
So the next one is actually related to prohibitive slopes, so.
So give me a second, the third one on your application was removed, right? The setback part, so number 3 on your
Yes.
actual.
Oh, 84-38
Oh,
was
that's
removed.
removed.
Yeah, it was removed. Yeah, so we originally had contemplated potentially a larger building, and we removed that variance request, so we are complying with the primary building setback.
Okay.
So we no longer need that. So the next one pertains to a portion of the parking lot with associated drive aisle, which is within a prohibitive slope area. So essentially, it's sort of in the center of the screen, keep controlling the laser pointer, there we go. So these prohibitive slopes, on the plan, just to orient you, pink slopes are precautionary slopes, blue is prohibitive slope, when you see shading. And these prohibitive slopes are actually man-made. As we've already touched on, we've got an existing building, existing parking field, existing stormwater basin, and that was all grading that was created as part of the existing condition, and as part of the redevelopment of the site, we're proposing to disturb that. Your ordinance does not distinguish between man-made and natural slopes, so that's why we're seeking variance.
Okay, I see.
Brian, do you agree they're man-made?
Yes. They're off the back of the existing parking lot.
Good, any issues? All right, we'll be neutral on that.
And then the last thing I would add, which we hadn't specifically put in the application, but as part of our conversation tonight, and we would, intend to request this relief to the extent that it's required. We've already touched on the access drive, retaining wall, fill, et cetera, that we're putting in that area. If we are looking at the existing calculated floodplain, the purple line today, we've all discussed that that is in a floodplain area. To the extent required, we would then request the variance relief based on the existing condition today, with the understanding that if the project's actually built, it will no longer be in the floodplain. But that is another request. We wanted to come to you tonight and talk to you about the project in general, but I would intend to amend the application specifically for that.
Okay, and I don't see why there would be a problem with that.
But why do you want to do that?
Just, I mean, based on our conversation, follow-up conversations with your township engineer and zoning officer and staff, just to make sure that we're covered to the extent someone would say, hey, technically this is a floodplain today and we're doing something in it. We wanted to make sure that we had requested all the relief that we should. Technically, when it's done, it won't be in a floodplain, but.
Are we sure?
Yeah, well,
So how do
flood
we?
law isn't officially approved
Yeah.
until
Yeah.
the work is
it's
done.
conditional under map revision right now. Then when they do the actual work, they do an as-built plan, they submit that. That's when FEMA officially changes the map. So it's almost like a chicken or egg thing. We can't get it until we do it.
Right, but they're saying go ahead with
Go
your
ahead
plan
with it,
because
yes.
it's gonna, okay, then I think that's fine.
It's kind of belt and suspenders because technically they are working in the floodplain
Mhm.
until FEMA officially issues the letter of map revision, which isn't issued until the project is done.
Yeah.
They approve the as-built to officially move the floodplain.
And Brian, if they don't build it the way the plans require, and the as-built plans show that, is there ever, what happens? Does FEMA go back and go fix it to be what you showed to get the Longmore approved?
You want me to take that?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'll make an eye
All
contact.
three projects I have
So,
with-
this is conditional letter of map revision, so nothing changes until we file the letter of map revision follow-up.
Right.
Okay? So, if nothing ever happens and nobody ever files that, nothing ever changes.
No, that's
The
not my
maps-
question. My question is, if you go and build it, and you do an as-built plan,
Oh, got it,
and then
okay.
FEMA, they say, hey, you did it a little bit differently,
Yeah, we have to revise it based on.
revise
that.
it to do.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
But
So I
that's what I was
misunderstood
thinking,
it.
that maybe
I
there would be a
misunderstood
slight-
the question. Yeah.
So the land development process requires you, can require you to make sure you do submit all this information that's required to actually get the CLOMAR, correct?
Correct. Well, it's a CLOMAR now, it's conditional.
Okay,
It
so to get
becomes
the final.
a LOMAR, which
Yeah,
you take the
LOMAR,
conditional,
okay.
it becomes official, and then they actually revise the map when you go online. You'll
Okay,
see.
so we have the municipal process for land development can stipulate that that is a requirement for this to happen.
Yeah, I think from the zoning perspective, she's just making sure that technically speaking, what they're asking to do on this plan, until the LOMAR is approved, does need the variance. But the way the zoning hearing board solicitor can write it is that no relief is needed if you ultimately do what the LOMAR says you have to do. So.
Got it.
Yep, yeah, it's sort of, it's a little bit of a chicken or an egg, so we just want to make sure we're transparent and we've addressed everything. So the next one, moving on to the special exception request, the first one pertains to prohibitive slopes again. We are proposing the installation of some storm sewer pipe in prohibitive slope areas on the site. Again, it's a previously developed site, and they are generally de minimis areas on the site.
Are those new pipes?
Yes, these would be, yes.
We should probably run that one by Mike and Martha.
These are sanitary sewers.
This is
Sanitary.
Oh, Sienna.
It's not sanitary.
it's not small.
I mean, sorry, yeah, that would be sanitary sewer, this is storm sewer, so. The sanitary on the building is sort of in the back, it's actually in an area that's not really affected by anything we're doing today. And assuming that, you know, we had talked about generally speaking that we think it will not be within those prohibitive slope areas.
Sorry, did you say that you're regrading all of the slopes? Like they're all gonna be
On the property.
the prohibitive slopes? Are you said
Yeah,
disturbing those?
We'll be disturbing a majority of them and we'll smooth them out on the.
Okay.
I mean, if you can see from the plan here, here, Peter, let me see.
Well, this one up here, as Brian mentioned, is the area between the existing building and the parking lot. So if you can imagine the building sits up and the parking lot sits down. So this is literally like in the parking lot between the building and the paving. This area, you know, again, as Brian mentioned, this is just like an area that was graded off when the different parcels were originally developed, steep in between. And the storm sewer is just a better way to convey the flows around the corners of the property.
Yeah, I mean, the slopes are all man-made, all these prohibited slopes are man-made. And as we go in and develop, we're gonna have to disturb certain slopes. And where we don't have to disturb them, we won't. And obviously, we're putting a parking lot where today there's prohibited slopes, we're gonna flatten that area out.
Would those changing of the slopes affect the other surrounding properties?
No.
So You don't see a problem with it, Brian? Our engineer says it's okay, so it's okay.
The next one relates to storm sewer in the floodplain. That is actually something that is permitted by special exception. We sort of touched on the local storm sewer. So again, there would be some storm sewer that is proposed that does not exist today within the floodplain area.
And where is that?
Here.
To the north, there's one to the north.
Actually, it's the 3 discharge points of the basin. And walls are
Okay.
already in the floodplain, so we put them in a couple of the floodplain.
And then the last thing, which we would, like I mentioned earlier, we want to clarify everything based on the existing and proposed floodplain. Your ordinance actually permits grading or fill in the floodplain by special exception. So in part and parcel of all of the conversation we've been having here, we intend to amend the application to formally request the grading or fill that we're doing for the Clomar, just to make sure that it is.
Okay.
I have one other question for you. Is the application going to also include the second property?
Yes, so that is a very good point, Brian. So as part of what we talked about, doing the access connection, as we were looking at the existing aerial, Mr. Walsh pointed out that there's a parking field that essentially almost butts up against the property line. We will need to relocate 4 parking spaces that you can see on this plan to create that access connection. And all of that area, again, is part of the existing floodplain / Clomar exercise that we've been talking about. So we will include that as well in the application.
Okay, great. John, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did have a question. Just as a general question, I suppose. Given the proximity of your proposal here for this hotel to the university, as well as, this access point here, which is going into the edge, which is for student housing, is there any plans here to convert this hotel into student housing at some point?
Right now, that's not permitted by the ordinance, student housing.
That's correct. But with this hotel, the way it's being proposed, would it be amenable to be able to be converted to student housing?
I don't even know if it's been designed to that point. Yeah, it's not designed to that point.
All right, thank you.
I have one other question, Ashley.
If you'll recall, when we did when they came before the board for the Clomar authorization, they also needed approval from Westchester Borough. So since there's impacts on the borough, Sean Metric reached out to me for copies of the application. I provided that to him.
And Westchester owns this parcel here.
That's the sewer treatment plant of the borough.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and the Clomar we received, just for clarification, does include the portion in Westchester Borough as well. So yeah,
But the land development process is going to be solely with West Goshen, correct?
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sean, I don't want to speak for the borough, but I think in the past, when the student housing was proposed on this site, they were concerned about students walking up Walnut Street. That concern probably will go away with this use, but I think Sean was just curious about what all would be proposed.
Yeah, I mean, they were just opposed to more students being able to access through, I forget which ward it was off Rosedale Avenue, and we had a lengthy conversation. I'm not sure everybody was on the same page, but here we are today with a different view, so that's fine. Thank you.
I don't think those same concerns will be forced.
Any other questions from the board? Is there any public comments, please?
Yeah, will the access road be open all the time? I assume it's not going to be gated?
That's correct. It
So it is open,
currently as
no gate?
proposed, yes.
Okay. Good.
Yes, Mr. Hall.
So have you met with the neighboring industry? I think it's Arkema, it used to be Sartima, a specialty chemical company. They'll be your neighbor. Might want to meet with them.
Are they located right next to the property? Are they?
They're a neighbor.
This one or this one?
Neither of them. Are they on Baltimore Street, Charlie? I don't think they're in this location.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gold. Any other comments from the public? Okay, hearing none, so I guess what I'm hearing is that the board does not want to take a position on this application. Is that correct? All right, well, thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to our next request, which comes from the folks at the West Goshen Shopping Center, 909 Pioli Pike. So at the last meeting, we voted to oppose the request for relief pertaining to the proposed freestanding signs on Pioli Pike. And the applicant subsequently met with the township solicitor and zoning officer to review the proposed signage. They modified their proposal, and now they have a new proposal that they want to share with us tonight. And we have representatives here from Capitol.
Hi, good evening. Carrie Nace with law firm Fox Rothschild, here this evening on behalf of the owner applicant, Capital Enterprise. As you mentioned, we were here at the last meeting to discuss with you the signage that's being proposed in connection with the redevelopment of this shopping center. With regard to the signage, there are several variances that are being requested, and we had a lengthy conversation regarding the proposed pylon sign along Paoli Pike. So as we discussed, what was being proposed was a new freestanding sign along Paoli Pike that would include the Target logo as well as the Chick-fil-A logo. And there was some discussion and some concern about the size of the sign and number of pylon signs that are along that frontage. So what's shown here in front of you is existing street view with Paoli Pike here. This is actually the entrance drive into the park and ride here. Down here is the entrance that'll go into the shopping center. Well, it goes into the shopping center, but that's the main access drive. And what you can see here is essentially a trailer. Zoom in a little bit. We currently have a freestanding. A little bit. Okay. So currently you have the existing shopping center sign back here that says West Goshen Shopping Center. We then have a freestanding sign for LA Fitness, and then there's also a freestanding sign for Wells Fargo. Down here in the lower left-hand corner, you can see that Wells Fargo sign was recently renovated. It's now a like a vertical bleed sign. So it's a little bit more kind of compact instead of like the horizontal sign that's shown up here. And then these signs all relate to the park and ride. The LA Fitness sign is about 20 feet and is 50 square feet as permitted by code. So following that meeting, we did meet with the zoning officer and the solicitor and to determine the number of pylon signs that would be permitted along Paoli Pike. As we indicated at the last meeting, we're allowed to have one freestanding sign per building. There are 5 buildings within the shopping center, including the new freestanding Chick-fil-A. So we did confirm that we would be permitted to have 5 freestanding signs. We currently have 3. We would be entitled to 2 additional signs. Again, each of them are permitted to be 30 feet in height, 50 square feet in size. So we did show kind of on the next slide here, we just kind of superimposed what that would look like. We're very limited in terms of space and frontage in this area. Again, this is part of the park and ride. So we just have a small area within this space here where the existing LA Fitness sign is. And as you can see, one of the concerns is with the limited amount of space, kind of having them all stacked right in front of each other. One would be concerned with visibility, but also kind of cluttering up that area and having it really look just like a deck of cards, one right after the other. So we believe that a better proposal would be, as we discussed, trying to get all of the tenants on one sign. One issue that comes up with that is under the existing leases with other tenants, they do have certain rights that if a multi-tenant freestanding sign is ever constructed for the center, that they also then get rights on the sign. So Acme, Staples, and Pet Supplies Plus all also have rights to be on a multi-tenant sign.
And LA Fitness.
Well, LA Fitness is on their own pylon right now. So what the proposal would be, and again, this is all subject to all of the tenants approving it, is we would install a new freestanding monument sign, add the other tenants. If LA Fitness agrees, we would remove their current pylon sign and include them on this monument sign. So what we're proposing here is the monument sign would be 30 feet in height. The total area is approximately 300 square feet. And a lot of that is really just in order to be proportionate in terms of the height and the size of the signs that would be needed. It's broken down, again, this is all somewhat a little bit of a moving target because we do need to go to all of the tenants and receive their approval in terms of what's being proposed. But what's shown on here, the target sign area here is approximately 100 square feet. When we showed the freestanding sign that we were originally proposing, that was approximately 135 square feet, so that was reduced down. LA Fitness is showing approximately 50 square feet. Again, they currently have a 50 square foot panel, so in order for them to agree to move on to the monument sign, they don't want to go any less than what they currently have. So that's about 50 square feet. Chick-fil-A would be approximately 40 square feet, which is consistent with what they were proposing on the freestanding. And then the others are approximately 30 square feet. But again, we're still working on those details once we get some feedback this evening, as well as getting approvals from the tenants.
Why would they not all be the same size proportionally?
Due to their location within the shopping center, as well as the amount of space that they're leasing. So for example, Target, they're leasing approximately 120,000 square feet in the corner of the shopping center, where LA Fitness, they're approximately 42,000 square feet, have a little bit more visibility being in the center. Again, same thing, Chick-fil-A, they're a freestanding building, they'll be out closer to Paoli Pike, so they have more visibility. So that's one of the reasons. And then if you go to the next slide, Brian.
And I'm just curious, why didn't we add CVS onto it, the sign?
Because that's part of Target.
CVS is inside. CVS
I know it's
actually
inside.
of Targets.
Okay, I'm just
We don't
curious.
actually, we're not a party to CVS.
Okay.
They're sub Target.
So if you could zoom in on this, the last slide. Okay, so this, what we did was we took the proposed monument sign and superimposed it along the frontage here at Paoli Pike. Again, within the vicinity, we kind of laid it over the LA Fitness pylon, so you could see what the frontage would now look like with the LA Fitness removed and the new pylon being there. Again, size is important. You know, it's more for people that haven't been in the area for a long period of time, coming down Paoli Pike. You know, you have the ramp and the overpass that kind of blocks the view of Target sitting back in that corner, as well as then people coming in the other direction, so that they can see the sign and be able to make a maneuver into the shopping center.
Okay, so our ordinance permits 50 square feet for a sign.
Correct.
And you're saying that this one that we're looking at right here is about 100?
It's about 300.
It's about 300.
The whole area.
Okay.
Now the Target itself is 100.
Right, and LA Fitness is 50.
It's 50.
And
Correct.
Chick-fil-A is 40, and, okay. And you said it's about 30 feet high.
Yes.
Is that what our ordinance allows for?
Yes.
Okay.
The height permitted is 30 feet.
Questions from the board?
I I'm sorry, let me go back 1 second. We did also, because I know it was a conversation we had, but we did look at adding the sign panels to the existing shopping center pylon that's currently there.
Yeah.
But as we took a look at it, it's not a viable option for a couple of different reasons. One, you can see that it really does set back farther into the shopping center, and we're limited in terms of the size panels, again, because of the existing structure, but also as we start adding on the number of panels that we're required to have. I believe we have 6 tenants here. It also wasn't viable in terms of like a structural standpoint and adding all those signs. Again, we thought that this was a better option, being closer to Paoli Pike and replacing it from where the existing LA Fitness sign is.
Okay, so this particular variance is the 84-52, exceeding the permitted sign area?
Yes. And it would also, so it would be exceeding the sign area, but also the setback.
And we talked about this because it's the right of way.
The right of way,
Okay.
correct. And the right of way is actually very deep into the site.
Now, I'm sorry, you still have to speak with LA Fitness to see if it's viable for them to remove their freestanding sign?
So I did have a preliminary discussion with them today. Not able to make any definitive answers, but they were amenable to it, assuming that we can agree on what the monument sign would look like. So if they didn't close the door on it 100%. Obviously, it would need to get their approval internal as well. But based on our conversation, it sounded like they were amenable to that.
But hypothetically, if they were to say no, we would then, I don't know where you would put this in relation to their sign.
We would have to move it. There is some room for adjustment, but they agreed that they felt that this was also a better option. Their sign there currently isn't as dominant, just from a structural and what it looks like.
Yeah.
And they felt that this was a good option. So, and again, also because if we put something there, it may end up blocking their current sign,
right,
because of the limited space.
Right.
And what about pet supplies? It looks like they're the low man on the totem pole. Have they agreed to this, or has there been any discussion with them?
There has not yet been discussion with them. They have very limited rights under their lease. They are permitted to be on the pylon sign, but they don't have certain rights in terms of placement, what order or the size of their sign.
Because they're in the same building as the Acme. The Acme leases more space. The Acme then would get rights to the one freestanding sign.
So right now, it would be, let me think, I think it would technically be the West Goshen Shopping Center sign, the one sign that's currently there, is for that building.
Okay.
It doesn't have
More
multi-tenants.
related to what rights to the tenants have.
Right, I'm just,
And
yeah.
so it comes down to just 5 tenants. I mean, there's 20-something tenants probably on the site, but there's only 5 that actually in their lease refers to if we create a multi-tenant sign.
It's in their agreement.
And we have other shopping centers, and you guys go to shopping centers all the time. It's just very standard to have one communal sign with all or most of the tenants.
Right.
But Acme, I'm sorry, Acme dates back into the 50s or 60s, and they've always had rights to be first on the sign. So
In
that's
their
why
agreement?
Oh, yeah, so Acme, their lease actually dates back to 1958.
Oh, wow.
Basically, quote, when we bought the farm, they were there, and they were the initial tenant.
So they say, if you ever put this sign out, we have rights to, yeah.
And before we ever talked to tenant number 2, we had to deal with them for my grandfather. And in their very short lease, with lots of rights on their side and almost no rights on our side, it gives them top billing on any sign we put up.
That's so interesting. Okay, so we're talking about the variance from 84-52 T1 and the variance from 84-52 right now. Are there any comments or questions from the board, or do you want to take a position or not? What are the thoughts? Neutral?
I have some questions.
Okay.
So, it seems the options are 2 signs, monument signs of 50 square feet, which would be compliant. And to your point, yes, it would look like a stack of cards. The alternative that's being presented is a 300 square foot 5-company sign, or is it 6? 1, 2, 3, 4. 6 company sign that is also within the right-of-way. When I look at it, I'm not sure. It looks like the LA Fitness sign is outside of the right-of-way. Do you have an answer to that?
The issue is not, so right now we're proposing to put this new sign right where the LSU is, and it's just outside the right-of-way, but the code requires that there's a setback from the right-of-way that equals the height of the sign. And so we're asking for relief from that code.
Okay,
Item that has a setback from the right-of-way.
Yeah.
So is it?
But we are going to put it right where the LA Fitness.
We say right where it is, so it makes a difference, right? Because the LA Fitness is on a single pylon or 2 pylons?
It's on a
Single pylon. So are you on the rear of that, moving forward, or are you starting there and moving back?
We have, I mean, it would be outside of the right of way, and we haven't determined an exact location for it currently. It will be outside of the right of way, but it won't be 30 feet back. I think initially if you were proposing it be a couple feet, I think it was like, and again, that's from the right of way, and the right of way itself is, I think it was close to like 50 feet, something like that.
So in general, I know it's only a rendition, but it looks like this sign is actually closer to Paoli Pike.
It would be closer to Paoli Pike, so you have the parking ride that causes the right of way property line to go further away from Paoli Pike. So it'll be on our property, but adjacent to the property line.
Sean, just see, this white right here is the existing sign. So this is the LA Fitness sign currently.
Yeah.
This is the driveway, the parking lot. They're still going to propose it in that general location.
Okay, we're probably closer to Paoli Pike.
Yeah. I do have this. It'll be where, so this is the right-of-way line here. This is Paoli Pike here.
Yeah.
This is the existing location of LA Fitness, and it would go within this area. Again, placement hasn't been 100%, but it's going to be within the same vicinity outside of the right-of-way.
It's just a question, I mean, did you get a variance to put the LA sign where it's located? I mean, it isn't that old, there maybe what, within the past 10 years, LA Fitness has been built there.
Yeah, I wasn't a party to that. I mean, LA Fitness came to us and got the right from us to build the sign relative to being the property owner, but then they came and they got the permit to build the sign, and they built it on their own. That's one of the reasons why they have such leverage with us on this sign, because it's their sign. And we really want them to give up their sign and let us put our communal sign in place of their sign. And actually, I think the top of their sign is 12 feet wide, and the monument that we're proposing is 12 feet wide in their space. And we haven't engineered it all yet, but in a perfect world, we would, if we approve and if we get the variance, we would draw the monument sign right where it is.
Would you consider the design of this sign to make it a little bit more, I mean, have some like stone around it or something like that, rather than just a couple of pieces of tube steel and signs in between?
We're trying to keep with the motif of the shopping center and the main pylon and the design. We went through that a little bit with the sign in the back of the shopping center. And in fact, cleaned this sign up and took a lot of the design away from the original design that had, we talked about earlier, to try to make it a little bit sharper and cleaner. Thought that would be more appealing. But there's no stone. We have other shopping centers where we have big stone. Usually, when you see those, they're actually cultured stone. I wish we did all the work use real stone. But in this case, because of the way the facade is all sort of mid-century steel, and the main pylon is all mid-century steel. It's trying to connect with the history of the shopping center.
But I'm going to guess that LA Fitness will be okay getting rid of their sign as long as they can keep that 50 square feet on a new monument. That's probably where they're going to come from, which means everything else in proportion, you need this 300 square feet. And my personal opinion is that's more than I like. I mean, our ordinance is there, and John read it last time for a reason, about the size of signs. To me, if you're on Paley Pike, you're going to be able to see Chick-fil-A, you're going to be able to see Target. The other companies here have not had any issues over the years that they've been there, have not had a sign. So, but putting this sign in right opposite on the other side of the street of these residences, I just feel is too big. So that's my opinion.
Are you suggesting that you want to oppose
I think the zoning hearing board should try to say you need to keep it in the ordinances, our ordinance, and 300 square feet does not. That's 6 times, well, 2 signs at 50 each is 100, so it's 3 times what is allowed at the moment.
I guess a question to the applicant though is if you oppose this one, are they going to go back to their original request? Like, what are you going to do? Because to me, it's how many signs does the board? I mean, they have the right to put 5. So,
So 300, 350 feet, what's the limit on asking for the variance? You see, if you want this, could you make it 200 square feet? Then you say, well, LA Fitness wants 50 of it, and Target says, well, we're 3 times the size of them, so ours has to be. So this is how it balloons up all the time.
I'm just saying, I think that you guys need to make sure you understand if the majority is opposing this particular
This is Sean's opinion.
This is my
opinion.
opinion.
I know, once you guys all state your opinion, I think they need to understand.
Yeah, we'll have that conversation. Yeah, we'll have that conversation. So,
I would just say, there's 3 signs at 50 each, so it's 150. The LA Fitness, the Chick-fil-A, and the Target. So by right, we would have the 3 50-foot signs, 1, 2, 3. Right?
Yes.
Right in a row.
Right.
So I completely understand where Sean's coming from, but it's 150 versus 300.
Yeah, it's twice as much.
Well, and unfortunately, once we do a monument, it opens up again, that's 3 more tenants that have rights to the pylon. So, and to answer your question, Kristen, I don't know, because we would have to go back to the tenants and say, here are your 3 options. A by right pylon at 30 feet height, but limited to 50 square feet, or, go back with our original application, or take our chances with this application. I mean, it's really going to be a discussion.
Well, the original application is also taking the chances they opposed to it.
Right. So it's, we'll have to discuss it with the tenants if this isn't.
I think what we took from the last meeting was that the most important thing for the board was to clean up the site relative to all the various signs. And
that was the discussion.
There's lots of signs we can't, all those DOT signs, there's 3 DOT signs right here.
Right.
That are.
And I appreciate that you guys went back and you looked at it again and you came up with this concept and you went and spoke with everyone.
What Mr. Walsh is saying is absolutely right. Once you go and put a bunch of tenants up and you have that discussion, talking to these tenants for the last week and a half about, well, if you're this big, if you want to be this big, you're bigger than we are, we were there first.
But isn't it in their lease agreement? Like,
some are.
Don't they not have the option?
What, in terms of being on that size? It's still, yes, their lease has certain provisions in terms of they have rights to be on here, but then we need to address the size and the position and those items. So that's what Chris is getting at. We have had, we've worked on this a lot this past week, and already one has said, well, if they're this big, we want to be this big. And if we're entitled to 50, why do we have to be 40? Why can't we be 50? So it's a lot of kind of hurting all the cats to try to get what we think is the best solution.
So then what happens? If you go back with this and they say that, then where are we?
So this, what we have presented in front of you has, majority have said this will work, or, we're very close to it. So, we have already reviewed it, obviously, with Target, with Chick-fil-A, with LA Fitness, Acme. They were showing what they have rights to under their lease. So, I feel pretty good that all of the tenants will agree to this. If they don't, we'll have to come back.
Okay.
I think that's where we are. If they don't agree to this and they want different area or different size, we'll have to come back.
Okay.
We feel pretty confident with this.
I would just say, to Sean's point, did anybody contact the residents or get a poll for what they would be opposed to or agree to? Or
Okay, so do we want to remain
Just for clarification, we're talking about by right, one freestanding per building, we have 5 buildings, so we can have 5 freestanding signs, as opposed to having one that would be maybe larger square footage, but only be one sign.
Correct.
3 signs. Wells Fargo stays, West Goshen Shopping Center stays, and this is the new one, so you got 3.
And an elephant stays.
No, LA Fitness.
Fitness, you go.
You've got 4 today, you've got 3 today, you put 2 new ones in the 50 square feet, or you can go with 3, but one of them is 300 square feet.
Right. But less signs.
Okay, well, I think we should let this go through. I think that one singular sign is better for people to drive.
Let the zoning hearing board make the decision.
Yeah, I would, yeah.
I'll agree with that.
All right, great.
I agree with that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, there were some other ones, so the freestanding sign, go ahead.
Well, just procedurally, since the board did make a motion to oppose, should they take a vote to retract that opposition?
Yeah, because now, I just want to make sure the applicant is agreeing right now that they're going to withdraw the first application with respect to 2 freestanding signs. They're going to substitute the application after this one. Full amendment, yeah. Okay.
Just so I'm clear, so when you go to the zoning hearing board, if you've had further information from these other tenants and they want slightly larger square footages for their signs, and now it's 325 square feet, would you come back here first, or are you just going to proceed to the zoning hearing board?
I think we would come back and review it with you. I think the board's, they didn't make a motion, but their position is with respect to a 300 square foot sign.
Which I'm opposed to, but
yeah.
Overall, I mean, as you, from what I said, we've been through a lot over the last 2 weeks relative to this.
Mm-hmm.
And we can get this through. I understand why you're concerned about this, and I understand your reservations. If we were to get this approved, we would get tenants to accept this. So that we're very, very close.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are we going to go through the rest?
Madam Chair, I think we already exhausted the rest at the last meeting and made a determination. I think Shelby has adequate direction for the zoning hearing board based on what was discussed in the last 2 meetings.
Thank you. Okay.
Before you guys run off, I just wonder if I could ask you, I know this might be moving parking. What is your, people keep on asking, when do you guys hope to have the parking open, and when do you have the Chick-fil-A open?
If everything goes as planned, Chick-fil-A will open towards the end of this year, and Target will open spring of 25.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. All right, moving on to agenda item number 6, which is discussion and possible approval of the following proposals for Carroll Engineering Corporation. The first proposal is the North Hills Community Storm Sewer Rehabilitation Project. And the second is the West Goshen Community Park Improvement Project, Phase 1. And just as a background, the township worked with Carroll Engineering to perform a regional stormwater feasibility study back in 2022. And this area of the North Hills neighborhood was identified as a strong candidate for much-needed stormwater improvements. The township directed Carroll Engineering to draw up a conceptual sketch of the project and to submit the project for the COVID-19 ARPA PA Small Water and Sewer Grant, which we were successful in receiving in the amount of $424,998. And tonight we are considering the proposal for design, bidding, and construction services for both the North Hills project and the Community Park project. Is that correct, Chris?
Yes, Madam Chair. And Brian's actually brought up a map that Mr. Peterson from Carroll Engineering has provided showing the location of the proposed project. Again, I want to commend Carroll Engineering for their work on the grant application and the success that they had in securing $425,000 for this project.
Yeah, excellent work.
So
Excellent work. We have some North Hills residents in attendance here too. It's really good.
So the total estimated cost, I'll start with the North Hill project. The total estimated cost in the proposal is a not to exceed figure of $76,600, which would roughly, slightly more, but would be in line with the township's match requirement under the grant.
Right.
And as noted, there was a revision that's before the board this evening just to remove the second paragraph on page 4 under basic fees. Chris and I discussed this yesterday, and there was an inconsistency because he did account for inspection time as part of their proposal cost.
Right, okay. Are there any questions from the board looking at this proposal from Carol and Dean?
This is going to be not to exceed of $76,600 for the bills. Invoiced on an hourly basis based upon the fee schedule. Am I missing the fee schedule here?
So the fee schedule was provided to the board in the fall as part of the budgetary process. So they bill on an hourly basis. When those bills come in, they are distributed to Brian and Dumont Bertolami to review prior to payment. And Chris does a good job of breaking everything out by project, so this will be given as an independent project.
Okay,
Do we anticipate having any problems with getting any of the easement approvals?
I don't want to speak for Chris or for any of the easement or for any of the property owners, but we did check this out.
Are they temporary or permanent easements or both?
If I may, good evening, everybody. We anticipate we're going to need...
Chris, could you come up to the mic, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the red line is where the new storm sewer is going to be going in, and there's also some swale improvements just to the north there, which is indicated with the red hash. We anticipate permanent easement will be required, which is along the relative path of stormwater as it is today, with one exception. As you get closer down towards the lake there, and it's a little hard to see here, but the path actually goes a little bit out to the west in a concrete lined swale, which is crumbling and falling apart, sections are separating, and we want to remove that, and that's going to be replaced by the new storm sewer. So for that particular portion, there's no longer a need to have a permanent easement. So we anticipate just needing a construction easement to allow for the removal of that and the regrading of the slopes as it goes down to the lake. So this was a topic I had discussed with Chris at the start of this whole project, and you know, obviously this is a concept that we thought was going to be most advantageous to this area, wherever that's all well and good. We need also the approval of the residents that these improvements will be traversing. So as I recall, and I don't want to speak too much for you, Chris, and you can clarify this, but my understanding was that a meeting was conducted with each of the affected owners for just giving them a rough scope of what the project was and trying to gauge their willingness to work with the township on this particular project, which I understood.
We had email exchange. I don't think there was a meeting. We did have some email exchanges, and the property owners did provide us with pictures that we included in the applications. And yeah, they were all, from the best of my knowledge, they were all amenable to granting us the easements that we needed.
Okay. I had one question in your proposal. It's under, so it's number 8, under survey design permitting services. It says you'll conduct 1 4-hour coordination meeting with the owners of the properties requiring the easements to review the sketch plan, and then incorporate any mutually agreed upon revisions to the design. I'm just wondering, I know that there were a lot of questions from the neighbors there about being involved in the project or giving some feedback. How does that happen? Are they able to be involved at any time?
Yes, we anticipate they're going to be involved. Obviously, we need their support of this project because they're also conveying easements to the township. We anticipate that we're going to probably try to meet with the residents once we have a rough sketch plan put together of maybe a 30% or 50% sort of design standpoint. Show them what the improvements are going to look like, try to get their input, and then hopefully that should guide the preliminary and final designs following that, and also the acquisition of the
Right, okay.
Question, Madam Chair. Regarding the MPDS permit, obviously there's going to have to be samples taken periodically. The effluent, whose responsibility is that going to be to maintain, take samples, reporting, all that?
There's no sampling required for an NPDS construction permit. You're thinking about a wastewater permit. The NPDS program does both wastewater and construction, but there's separate permits that are required. It's all under the same umbrella. So
No sampling requirement.
Will there be any maintenance at all after the construction is completed in the whole project?
Yes,
It's
certainly.
gonna-
There's going to be regular maintenance required, as with any stormwater system in the township. So, Mark and his guys are going to have to probably regularly clean inlets.
Right.
We're going to have to monitor. There's a pre-treatment detention facility, which is shown and signed in there on the plan, which is intended to slow the rate of stormwater, although we're not increasing the level of stormwater that's getting to the lake. We wanted to make sure that we're not having any adverse impacts to the lake. So we have a small detention facility that's being put into slow flow rates before it does make its way into the lake, and also allow time for removing suspended solids and what have you. There's going to be an energy dissipator at the end of the end wall that's there, which is usually has riprap there. So you need to keep an eye on certain things like that for erosion as we go forward, as you would with any detention facility. So that's really the maintenance that we anticipate for this.
So we'll be doing the sampling for the suspended solids and various other things, and all the maintenance the township will be responsible for?
There's no sampling requirements or
Okay.
anything required for the stormwater.
Can I ask a question that I think is really important? Who today is responsible to maintain? Is there a declaration of covenants of some sort? Is there some document that identifies that the HOA or the community association is responsible for what's happening?
For the maintenance you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anyone know?
Maintenance.
No. So is this now Township's going to take on this obligation going forward?
Right, that's my question.
Yeah, that's a question. I'm not sure it is the township's responsibility, but
Right.
just looking at that detention basin, isn't it going to, over time, silt up because of the volume of flow through there, that you're now settling it out before it goes in the pond? The pond is getting a lot of silt in it, presumably a lot of it coming down from that washout from West Penn Drive. But even so, it's improved with this new design. Over time, that will silt up, surely, that new detention basin. It will require dredging, or at least restoring to its new capacity.
Yes, that's accurate.
So we will need an O&M agreement with, if it's on North Hills Civic Association property, with the Civic Association as to who is responsible for maintaining it as its functionality, correct?
That's correct, yeah. We assumed that the township is going to take all, if not partial, responsibility of the stormwater that's being installed in the newly acquired easements. Now, that's not to say that we anticipate that the township's now going to be on the hook to maintain the lake, because that's not really being impacted as part of this project, or approved, let's say.
Well, I was referring to all the maintenance that's going to be required moving forward after it's completed. I'm not sure that we agree the township was going to do that.
Right, I think that's a really critical point. I think that's going to be the first question, that the easement, people who own the property where the easements are needed are going to say, well, who's maintaining it? Any of the projects we did, like Raven Lane and some of those other ones, we agreed, the township agreed, we were going to put in a new pipe, township was going to maintain it. So I think that's an important point for the board to decide from a policy perspective.
Exactly.
Can I ask some questions of the residents? You don't know if the HOA maintains the lake as it is now? And that area? Do you know?
We do maintain it,
but not just
ask
the pipes leading to
more
it.
specifically.
What about the pipes leading to the lake?
So there are no pipes today, that's the problem. The
Okay.
problem is that it's just a degraded channel.
So the HOA will take over the maintenance moving forward?
I mean, it's not township property, though.
Yeah, it's not township property.
So we wouldn't...
So, look, 26 years ago when I moved here, the channel below East Penn Drive, or West Penn Drive, was this wide and this deep. Today it's 20 feet wide and 20 feet deep. And it's essentially unmanaged stormwater, is what, not essentially, it is unmanaged stormwater. So, thus the cooperation between the neighborhood and the township. But it is essentially a stormwater project. So how could it not be the township's responsibility to put in, to maintain a pipe system once they put it in?
Because the township can't do this project without the consent of the property owners.
And the township doesn't have to do the project.
And the township has no obligation to do it. The township is doing the project to benefit the residents. Ultimately, though, once it's done, property owners then should become responsible for at least some of the maintenance that's required.
Right.
I have to maintain that on my own property. That's the property owner's responsibility. So after we move forward with this project and those pipes are in place, the township no longer has the responsibility to maintain that. That is going to be on the property owner,
I get
whoever
you.
that is.
And don't want to be difficult, but when you have a storm drain on somebody's property and the township comes out and sucks out the leaves, they're not saying, hey, that was your tree, this was your tree. They're just sucking out the leaves because in order for that storm drain system to function, those leaves need to go, and that's essentially the type of, we're not talking about leaves here, but essentially it's sort of the same thing. The sediment load is going to decrease way over 90%.
I know, we're talking about like property maintenance rights and responsibilities. So I think the question for the board is going to be, do we need to explore this further and get some answers as to who?
Yeah, it's an open question. I think we need to work through it. It's really not on the table tonight. It's trying to make sure we have a design.
I just want to address it, that's all, because it's going to be a huge issue, and I don't want to get down the line and then say, oh, we didn't know this.
I agree.
So,
We think that we are very supportive of the project, and thank you so much. But one of our concerns is that we haven't really been able to have a conversation with you about the totality of the project. As you said, you did a conceptual sketch. I, in November of 2022, provided a detailed letter to the township stating how some parts of that conceptual plan weren't going to relieve the problem that they were intended to relieve, not on this channel, and was told, we'll get there once we get a grant and move from conceptual sketch to design, but now we're moving to essentially construction drawings. So
No, that's not accurate, Jamie.
You're still doing design.
okay, so we just want to have a conversation.
You will be afforded that opportunity.
Before we start anything about, what's it all going to be? Just what's it all going to be?
Understandable. You will have that opportunity. I promise you, you will have the opportunity to share your ideas and your thoughts. We are not at that point yet. For tonight, though, just moving forward, are we still able to approve this proposal and move forward, even though we don't have the answers to that critical question?
Well, I have one follow-up to that, because I do think there's a fundamental question here. So, if the township says we are not going to be responsible for the ongoing operation and maintenance of this pre-basin detention basin, and the Civic Association, whose land it's on, says, well, we don't want it. We don't want to be responsible for operations and maintenance. We've got a conflict that then says this design is not feasible because neither party will move forward with it.
Right.
So then we'd be left with a design that says, all we're going to do is solve the problem on that one property or two properties, and we're just going to bring that water into the pond and spread it out a little bit, and it will continue to, yes, we'll stop the erosion that's happening on those two properties, but it will continue to silt up. So it does fundamentally impact the design of what will be done if neither party can agree as to the O&M agreement for the basin.
Hold on one second. Hold on. So we need to make a decision then about how to move forward. Do we want to find out the answer to that question fundamentally before we move forward with this proposal? Because I think it's a good point, Sean. What's the point in doing that if we don't know who's going to take?
Yeah, that's my whole point in the beginning. I think you need that answer.
Can I ask a question for clarification? Kristen, maybe give some insight on this. For the Ravens Lane project, we ran about 1,000 feet of HDPE pipe from Sylvan all the way down to Eagle. Now, and we got easements through several properties. Now, is it the township's responsibility to maintain that?
Pretty sure that's where we go to easements now.
Yeah.
So there's the pipes that are going underground, there's the basin, so they're like, would we be responsible for the pipes going under the roads?
I don't know.
Like, how would you do that?
The pipes within the right-of-way would still be the township's responsibility. They're the township's responsibility.
I'm talking about all the maintenance that would have to be done on
Like
this
dredging that basin.
forward. Yeah, dredging the basin and all the stuff maintenance that needs to be done moving forward for the next 50, 100 years.
Right. I would be happy to have that discussion. And my sense is that homeowners association would be happy to deal with the pre-treatment basin, but not the pipes leading to it. I mean, that's,
Which would require easements in order for us to do the work.
right. We maintain a 4-bay today. So I think the homeowners association would be willing to do that, but not everything from West Penn Drive down to the 4-bay. That seems a little wild to have to ask homeowners to maintain. And pipe infrastructure.
And my question is on the private property owner on north of West Penn Drive, which is a large easement that's being requested. And, input into that design is important for us because if we are responsible for maintaining it, which I do now, and all the water, the inherent water, we want to make it maintained. Versus the township came in years ago and put riprap in the back of our property to help with erosion. And I can't maintain it. It's been filled up within, months. And I've tried to clear it over the years, and I just let it go because it's not maintainable. So that's why input along the way in the design from at least our property, which is 962 President Drive, is important because we want to make sure if we're responsible for maintaining it, which is fine. It needs to be maintained. But that a lot of effort and heavy equipment.
I just want to know who's responsible. So we need to answer that question. I don't know how we're going to answer that question. We're not going to do it tonight, but we need to have.
Before we move
Yes.
forward, I think we need to know because it'll change the whole design, or maybe not no work at all. It may come to a point where we don't do anything because we can't agree. I don't know the answer. I'm just posing all of this out so that we can have an open discussion regarding it.
Who's authorized to speak on behalf of it? Because the way I understand the association is voluntary. You're not required to be a member, right?
So it's a civic association that maintains it.
Right, but you're not, as a member, as a lot owner in North Hills, you're not mandated to be a member of that civic association. So again, that's the other problem.
You have to join year after year.
So there may end up being that nobody's a member of the civic association. So you really can't impose the duty upon a civic association that's not mandatory.
Whose land is this cutting through? And if we get easements from those property owners, or those
association.
so no one owns, no single person owns that?
You've got Stacy Knight, you've got Valerie Kellett, you've got Doug, and then you've got the Civic Association.
Well, I'm just wondering if the whole concept would need to be that you'd have to form an HOA if this goes forward. I'm just, you can't have a civic HOA. You may have to have an actual HOA formed.
I love that. I want an HOA.
And then everybody would have to buy into it too. I'm just suggesting, I'm not saying you have to do that or, that may be an option out.
So when you put a pipe in, like John, you discussed 1,000-foot of pipe that went in, if it's grass that's on top of a pipe, then the property owner is going to maintain it just like they maintain it. But if it isn't grass, but I don't see why it wouldn't be grass, because that's why you put the pipe in. So you get you covered with earth and stabilize it with grass. So then the property owner would maintain it. But inlet structures, outlet structures are in, things like separation of pipe. Those are, I think, your responsibility.
Does the township maintain stormwater systems throughout the township on private property, and whose responsibility is that, Brian?
Okay. It's all over the place because
What
things that were
happens if
built
the
the
property-
70s and 80s don't have defined responsibilities. Things that are done today, even if they're on private property, the township says it's yours.
What would happen if the property owner says, I'm in a bad mood, I'm going to go dig up the township's pipe?
We have agreements and ordinances that prohibit that.
Okay, so then it's just a matter of working, you've got some template of agreements and just working with that template.
It's in part of the stormwater management ordinance, yeah. So I think as far as where you go forward, I think the critical question besides the design, as you guys have said, so I think let's put it back to trying to arrange a meeting with representatives of the Civic Association and the 4 affected property owners, obviously Chris, sort of talk through the various issues and come back with proposals to the board.
And I think they have to, on their end, figure out how this is going to work. If you are going to be responsible for the maintenance, maybe form an HOA, or maybe you charge everybody a fee in the neighborhood. I don't know how you do it, but I think you have some homework on your end, too, to figure out.
Are there options to cooperate in the maintenance, where it could be partly our expense, partly
I don't know what the outcome could be, but, once you do your homework and figure out how it's going to be paid on your side, then we can talk about some options.
Well, and if I may too, can we get back to talking about the pretreatment facility? So that actually wasn't part of the original concept plan. That was added with some input from the folks from North Hills. That's not to say that it's necessarily required from a stormwater aspect. What we're doing with this project is really not changing any impervious surface, right? So we're not generating any new volume of stormwater or rate. We're just trying to address erosion issues and put in appropriately sized pipes, right? So theoretically, we could still take this end wall to the end of the lake and sustain stormwater. So whether you choose to remove the sediment from the pretreatment facility or from the lake, it's still sounding to me like the township wants that responsibility to fall on North Hills. So we have the potential to simplify the design by removing the pretreatment facility if the Civic Association determines that we don't want to be on the hook to maintain a second stormwater facility.
But is the pre-treatment facility like a grassy indentation, or is it like a concrete structure with riprap and stuff like that? Like what does it look like?
It's essentially a small basin. And we anticipated that there was going to be a small forebay associated with that. So, we could potentially look at a gabion wall that would, confine stormwater as it comes out of the end wall into a smaller space. It would then spill over the gabion wall into the remaining portion of the pretreatment facility and then subsequently go into the lake. But again, there's ways of dissipating the flows in other ways with a traditional riprap apron, which can tie directly into the lake.
But the cheapest way for us to deal with the sediment isn't to get it into the lake. It's to get it into a forebay and clean sediment out of the lake.
To me, the costs seem equivalent, whether you're dredging the lake or you're pulling them out of the forebay.
Now, forebay, you just bring it in a long arm excavator and hogging it out to the lake. In addition to a bunch of permits, you got to lower the water level and that.
Hey, Chris.
But we'll talk.
Would removing that or making any modifications affect our grant at all?
No, I think the scope of the project is still essentially the same. We're just trying to provide the appropriate conveyance for the flows that exist today.
So I guess the bottom line is there's options from an engineering standpoint that we can pursue based on where you're coming from and costs. And it sounds like
We just need a way to be able, if we are going to be maintaining it, we just need a way to be able to do it that we can do with just yard tools and not heavy equipment, since we don't have the money to,
So I guess once we get that answered, then we can move forward with a different engineering conceptual design. And
Yeah, and I had another question about the survey part of it, because we had a survey done when we did the spillway, the other side of the lake. Can we just reuse it? Is it, I mean, it's the same topography.
I was involved with that project too, and our survey was limited to the southern portion of the lake there, which is the opposite side of where we're going to be working. So,
I didn't know if it was like.
We could incorporate it into our base plan, and it's kind of hey, it's nice to have because you can see that area, but it doesn't necessarily impact where we're actually working for this particular project.
Is this going to require council on their part? If there were to be some sort of contract or agreement drawn up, even if there were hypothetically some kind of shared responsibility, you might want to consider.
Yeah, and turning about sooner than
so
later.
that we can work something out. I don't know.
So moving forward, I guess a meeting needs to be, once you do your homework on your end, and we have a meeting. Now, can we have a meeting like a public meeting like this, or it would be a private meeting with just 2 board members?
I think it would be a public meeting.
We have a staff meeting.
Okay, with maybe 2 board members and them?
Yeah, so let's figure that out. Let's figure that question out.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Steve.
Yeah, a few years ago, the township stepped in and helped the association with closing off the drainage pile that was in there, put a spillway in. I think the township paid for most of that, if I'm correct? Who's responsible for the spillway?
Probably was not determined.
How long ago?
It wasn't that long ago.
Well,
It was not that long
Wasn't
ago.
that many years ago, I'm just asking.
I can fill in what I understand from talking with Rick Craig. The spillway in Onion Pond is associated with the Civic Association. The township did replace the pipe that went under the road because it washed out the road.
I think township paid for everything, I think I paid for the spillway too.
Township may have paid for the spillway, but the maintenance and maintaining the spillway is
Well,
theirs.
then that answers your question on this particular item. You've already passed the maintenance on to the association for that, then this should have a similar.
So a quick history on why the township paid for the spillway?
Very, very, very quickly, yes.
Wait, so there's a storm sewer line that goes down on the other side of North Penn Drive. And when the township redid it 25 years ago, they ran into the pipe that drains the pond, drilled a hole right through our pipe, and ran a pipe, smaller pipe through the bigger pipe. And they, knowing this, said, oh, goodness gracious, what have we done? We put a manhole right there so that they could observe it over time. And then with increasing storms, one storm, the waters couldn't deal with each other and blew the top off the manhole and ate the road away. But Rick agreed that the township, in fact, had drilled a hole through the drainage pipe of the pond. And he told the Board of Supervisors, yes, we should cooperate and fix it. That's, but whatever.
I have one other question actually related to the proposal. So the funding for the grant came from COVID funds?
Correct.
And there are some requirements that come with that with regard to the bid process. Have we got the clarity that we don't need to bid engineering services for this project?
DCED is under the understanding that we're going to utilize the cost for engineering as our match requirement. So we did clarify. Kristen spoke with DCED and they did clarify that, correct, Kristen? I mean, we don't have to bid it out if we're going to use it as our match. Yeah.
Because we're paying for the engineering services as part of the overall project. Does not have to be bid.
Correct.
Okay.
You're not using the grant funds to pay for the engineering.
Okay, but anything we use grant funds for, which is the construction in this case, has to be bid. Okay.
It must be bid out.
Okay, so
Chris, quick question, minor question actually. Part of your proposal is there's 3 weeks of full-time inspection of the actual construction, 120 hours, I believe. Which pay grade would that be that would be doing that work? Technician, field rep?
That would either fall under chief field representative
Field rep.
or the gradation right below that. I don't know the official title of that, but
Would it be a field rep?
it would be a field rep, yes.
Right there.
And that's just a best guess on the amount of inspection that's required just based on the scope that you're seeing before you on this sketch plan.
okay, so the plan is to then, I guess, table this proposal until we have an answer? Yeah. I'm looking for it. Yes.
Can you steer me towards details on the easements? So I need to do my homework on that so I can fully understand it, and it is very specific down to the township level. Is it the same for state of Pennsylvania, Chester County, is it specific to West Coast? And where are my resources to really do my homework on that?
So it gets defined. Chris's office would do a plan, and there would be a legal description that defines the dimensions of the easement, and there would be such things like if, let's say it was a permanent easement that granted the township the opportunity to go into maintenance, there might be some provisions in there where we have to give you so much notification before we're coming out to do work, 24 or 48 hours, something like that. I can send you some examples. They all get recorded with the recorder of deeds, so I can send you an example.
Yes, so there isn't a form necessarily.
It's flexible, it's all legally.
It's negotiated between what's called the grantor, who's the owner of the property, letting somebody else use their property. But in all of these instances, it's a negotiation as to what that document says.
Right.
Now, we do have forms that we've used for other similar projects, and that's what Chris can share with you.
And then, like I said, any easements that are approved by the board for a stormwater project get recorded against the property in the recorder of deeds office. So I can send you whatever is publicly recorded and it would all be accessible online.
Great, yeah. Kate, you have my contact.
And before you move on, I know there's a lot more to cover tonight. I just want to say that we are so happy that you're willing to work with us, and we like all this. We like this project. We just have to figure things out on our end, and without understanding what that little blue thing is, and like what that means for us, and if we were responsible, what would we do? Like those are the questions people are going to be asking us. And so for us to like get our own neighborhood on board, this is like the first we've talked about it, so we really just need to talk to you and understand what it all means. We want this project, we just have to figure out.
Absolutely. No, I completely understand. And we're going to have those conversations and we're going to figure this out because clearly we want to help you guys too. And we went through all this, to get this grant. We have everything. So, of course. And I appreciate you guys being here tonight. We'll work on this issue and we'll be in touch. Okay. So moving on to the next proposal, which has to do with the West Goshen Community Park Improvement Project. This is phase 1, and this is a cost of $23,000 for the rehabilitation, for the design for the rehabilitation for the basketball court and the drainage improvements at the tennis courts.
Yes, that's correct. And this was allocated, the project is being partially funded through $450,000 of grant funding through county and state resources. And Chris did update his proposal based on their new rate schedule since this was originally done in 2022, I believe.
Okay. Any questions for Chris about this proposal?
So this does include the construction, administration, inspection phase of the work too, right?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
So about one of the things, when I was reviewing this, there's standard terms and conditions that are referenced in the proposal, so I wanted to look at those because the fine details are always the important points. And I did have a conversation with Chris. He was able to jump on a call late in the day. There's 4 issues in the standard terms that I'd just like to them to consider modification. And I just would ask that the board, if you're going to approve the proposal, just be it subject to being satisfied that those standard terms are revised to a satisfactory, acceptable state. And they're really dealing with, for example, their standard terms say that all disputes go through mandatory arbitration. I'd like to reserve the right to go to the court if we need to. There's one thing about certain, and because their standard terms apply to any services that they apply, some of them may not be applicable to this particular project. So I'd like them to clarify that. And the other thing is there's no reference in the standard terms and conditions that they must maintain a level of professional liability insurance. Obviously, Carroll Engineering has that insurance, and I would just like some reference to that they have to maintain that during the course of the project. So again, we spoke with Chris's, manager, Bill Malin. Is that who was it?
Yes.
Yeah. And again, he said all of those, there's 4 things basically that brought to their attention. They didn't seem to have any issues with them. So we think we can work through this very easily.
Kristen, one of the things that comes up on these standard contracts is often the indemnification for negligence. Is it?
Right, and that was one of them. So they actually didn't. I wasn't too unhappy with the way their standard terms are. They just it doesn't say we're indemnifying them for their negligence. We're not. Okay. So that was one term that I think I'm satisfied with. The one thing I was thinking they would have is most engineering standard terms limit their liability to what you pay them. This does not do that, so that was a good thing.
Okay.
So.
And we reviewed the changes with Kristen, and I had that discussion with Bill Malin, my department manager, and we're confident we can reconcile those issues going forward.
Yeah.
We'll just work with Kristen on that.
Sounds good. Okay, great. Is there a motion then to approve the proposal for the West Goshen Community Park Improvement Project Phase 1 with those conditions, on the condition that those terms are met, that Kristen just outlined?
I'll make that motion.
All right, thanks. Is there any public comment on this?
Can I make one quick comment? I have mentioned to Sean in the past that right below, I guess it's the basketball court, is a dry stormwater pond. I've never seen any water in the pond. And the township owns the property where the art building is, which has no stormwater. And all of that runoff goes straight into the reservoir where we pull our drinking water from. It's a pretty simple project to pipe some of that unmanaged stormwater into this poorly used existing stormwater basin, retrofitting it to actually provide some incredibly beneficial stormwater, which you could count towards your NPDES requirements.
Well,
Thank you for your comment.
if I may jump in, I just want to give a reminder to the board that a portion of that basin is going to be allocated to a potential splash pad improvement in the future where we're going to dissipate the flows from that facility, in that underutilized facility. So that'll be something to consider too.
I kind of believe, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but your original proposal had some like naturalization of the basin. Is that correct?
There were going to be some improvements to the existing spillway as that was in poor condition, but it's going to be relatively the same as it is today, which is a grass detention facility. The splash pad would actually tie into the facility via an underground perforated pipe network.
Okay.
On that, I mean, we're looking at Chesapeake Beach now. We don't own that property. The township does not own that property adjacent to the township park.
The yard doesn't. It's a lease. We lease it to be able to use for over.
We lease it from them.
Wait.
Yeah, for overflow parking for
Are you
community
talking
park.
about this piece right here, this building, Jamie?
Yes.
That property is owned by ARC. It's not owned by us.
Okay, so it's not our property.
This sliver right here is owned by us.
So is the parking lot to the left hand? So, right, that parking lot to the right, I thought part of that parking lot was on township property.
Well,
Could,
It is.
it is, but this property lines here aren't necessarily accurate.
gotcha.
Because when we were looking earlier tonight at the property for BT Investments, the property line on Chesapeake Beach is almost against their building, where in reality it's against the other building.
Yeah, I get you. Look, splash pads are great, but we're drinking the water from the reservoir, and all that junk from the parking lot washes straight into the reservoir. I can't believe the parking lot's there, to tell you the truth. And I moved the splash pad, and I use that stormwater management facility for stormwater management. But that's,
Well, it's certainly something we can look at when we do the next phase. I don't think for the basketball court tonight, it can wait.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Chris. Thanks for being here. All right, moving on to item number 7, which is the possible approval of an intergovernmental cooperation agreement. So Mr. Bayshore circulated this agreement around to all of us. We should have it in our packet. This agreement, as I understand it, would be between West Goshen, Birmingham, Collin, Downingtown, Easttown, North Coventry, and Upper Euclid. And I think that Captain Dominio wanted to share some thoughts about this.
Sure. Here to answer any questions, and I'll give a brief overview of it. So this is relative to our report management system, which I'll refer to as RMS just for brevity. So in 2022, we embarked on a project to replace our current RMS, which is going on 26 years old. It's outdated. They're going to sunset it eventually. They keep pushing off the sunset date, but they will eventually sunset it. So we took the project on ourselves, or spearheaded the project ourselves, surveyed the county and see who else still was using this current system, which is called Metro Alert. Metro Alert has since been bought out twice, and that's why they're going to sunset the software. So anyhow, we after doing the survey, we came up with those townships or municipalities, that Madam Chair just mentioned, and it basically conformed a consortium or a steering committee to search for a new RMS. So since the fall of 2022 is when we started this, we demoed about 8 software vendors. Decided as a group to go with Central Square, which is the vendor that we're proposing tonight. Central Square happens to be the one company that owns the current RMS system. We just ended up going with them. They were the last ones we demoed, and everybody seemed to like it.
Which I want to jump in. That's an important point, because the only way you can continue to get the records that are being stored today under Metro Alert is to go with this company, which is an important point because you then really need those records, you need to go with a particular vendor.
Like you would lose the records? If you
So,
were-
yeah, like Kristen just said, the record, the conversion of the records or the maintenance of bringing them over, there's a fear of data loss of not fully bringing all the records over. So the migration is guaranteed to be 100% in
So we're really
staying with
locked
the
in,
vendor.
is what you're telling us.
I'm sorry.
We're kind of really locked in.
Well, I mean, it's not necessarily. We certainly have. When we looked at some other vendors, they were guaranteeing that they would stay with it until we were happy with it, but it would prolong the project. But the current vendor, the Central Square, their new software that they're offering to replace the existing software, just furnished all the features that we were looking for. So we did, when the chief and I came to you during budget time last year, we originally requested, and it was based on an original quote at the time, and you'll see it in the budget was $58,874. After continued negotiations and basically negotiating the migration, because the migration fees are the biggest fees in all the software vendors. So after negotiating migration fees and a few other things, it did bring that fee down for us, or that total cost down for us. So you guys have the spreadsheet in front of you, I believe, that was part of the packet.
It's not in the board packet, right, Chris?
No, I apologize. I thought it was, because when we spoke today, I thought we were.
Yeah, I didn't have that. We just had the summary, the total amount. That was
No problem. I can
So you can just break it down.
Yeah, no problem at all. So the total cost for the consortium for year one is $299,354.18. So the breakdown for all 7 municipalities involved, the breakdown is 2 parts. First of all, it's prorated based on usage. West Goshen has the largest of those municipalities. It's broke down based on the usage, and then there's a shared system costs that are elements that the software needs, as far as the electronic filing of traffic and non-traffic citations, crash filing through PennDOT, NCIC information, and all the bells and whistles that the software is required to have. So those shared system costs are flat, no matter if there's one municipality or one customer or 20 customers. So obviously, the more municipalities that are involved, the slices of the pie get thinner. So the total for year one, like I said, is at $299,354. Moving forward for the consortium is $74,697.
The one thing that's important that I didn't understand is that West Goshen currently today hosts the server for the system, and the other municipalities, utilize the server that's located at this township building. So that's sort of made sense for the township to be the spearheading group to do that, because that's going to continue to be the case.
Yeah, we're going to host it's an all-site server, so we're going to host the server and the backup server in 2 different buildings here on the township complex. The backup is, the emergency backup, the third backup is cloud-based. So the redundancy will be in the cloud. So for some reason, if both servers go down at the same time, they can restore the software through the cloud within an hour. So the redundancy is, the second redundancy, I should say, is the cloud-based.
I thought I just read on there that it was 45,000, like our share.
So that is year one, is 45,000 is our share.
And then, I'm sorry, what was the 70,000 number?
The 74,000 was year 2 for the consortium. So yeah, so let me break that down.
So year 1 is 299 and year 2 is
74 for the consortium. So our share for year 1 is 45,487. Year 2 through 5, because it's a 5-year contract, that's 13,000. I have one.
Oh, okay, I see.
That's one extra column.
And then just going, okay. Yep. Okay.
Back.
And so the other thing that I want to make sure I get right, so they were offering some kind of bulk pricing
so there was
for grouping?
Yep, there was two advantages to go in this, and I should have probably explained at the beginning. There's 2 advantages to go in this as a consortium or as a bulk. Yeah, absolutely. The discounts were deeper. when we're bringing 7 municipalities in. But the biggest, probably more important, at least to us, is the information sharing. So the information sharing, because right now with the current system, there's too many systems in the county, there's too many software vendors in the county. The one we have now, Metro Alert, and another one. To be able to share data with the other municipalities right now, there's an extra fee. CobraNet is a third-party software, basically, to be able to share those. These are all now interconnected. There's outside of these 7, us, including us, outside these 7 municipalities, there are a handful of municipalities that are sitting on the sidelines, waiting to see how this is all going to work out, wanting to jump in, and all that will do for us is like I said, most important to law enforcement is the information sharing. But second of all, it will slice this pie a little bit deeper, so the prices would go down, our annual costs would go down.
That was actually one of my questions. Out of how, we have 6 participating, 7 with us.
Yes.
Out of how many asked so far? Like, what's the total in the real world? If we had 100%, how many municipalities would we have participating in this? Okay.
What exactly?
Like how many more made?
Oh, made shop one? Yeah, I wouldn't know. I mean, I can tell you there's 3 right now that are sitting keep calling and saying, hey, how you guys making it? They love the idea, but they had just, within the last 5 years, committed to another software that they're just not happy with. And we did, the software vendor that they were talking about, we did demo, and we agreed why they probably didn't like it. It just fell short of a lot of our asks.
So would you look at the municipalities the closest to us to want to get involved in this? Or would you look at the whole state of Pennsylvania? Like, what's the
No, we're looking just to stay within the county. Within the county, with one exception. Montgomery County has two agencies that are watching to see what's going on. Because North Coventry, which is the farthermost tip, they're almost an annex of Montgomery County. They work very close to Montgomery County. So there's 2 departments in Montgomery County that have asked about it. So, but yes, I mean, geographically, it makes sense.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, question of these 7 municipalities that are looking to join in on this, all of them or any of them already signed ordinances and resolutions to join in yet?
No, we didn't want to, I represent 3 of them, we didn't want to take it to them until we knew you were comfortable with this whole concept.
Because we're hosting it?
And just because you're the lead.
So my question is, you were talking about how we're hosting the current server. So if we are now, I guess, switching to a different server, are there going to be other municipalities that are relying on us that we're now going to be sort of leaving in the...
No, not at all. So the municipalities right now, so what Chris was saying about we currently host the server, we host the alert server for us. They do have, it's kind of a combination. They have their own servers, but they do communicate. So no. So no to answer your question. Okay. These 7 though, or these 6 this will be the only server now. And what's making it convenient is not only Chris to share some of the clients, but our IT vendor has a few of these clients. So it's making it's
integrated.
It's so integrated. It's a win-win for everybody because Josh, everyone knows Josh Cook. He has been coming to all the meetings with us to streamline the process. So he's working with these he's working with the vendors of his clients plus their IT vendors.
And I think that, at least I have to speak for the municipalities we represent, the chiefs and police have been very involved with Justin dealing with this and are anxious to get it going, and their boards rely upon the chiefs for, they delegate that duty to the chiefs to say, okay, you've done the homework, is this the system you need, and they budgeted for it, so I don't anticipate that they're going to have a problem signing on.
Okay.
Because we are the host for the server, is there any additional staff that has to be dedicated towards maintaining it?
No, because it's really just replacing the current server we have now with the new server. So our IT department maintains that for us.
Okay. Just so I understand, the budget we got from Chief Carroll, and this is what we budgeted for 2024 for this, was for $58,873.
Correct.
But what you just handed us tonight, the year 1 total for West Goshen would be for $45,000?
Correct.
Okay, so it's actually be less than what we budgeted?
Yeah, so when we first proposed this, when we had our budget deadline was their first proposal to us. 2 things happened. 1, an additional municipality hopped on board, and 2, the data conversion of the migration. We were able to negotiate that down. So the data migration was the big one. They came back with us with another solution, which reduced the cost.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just had a question about this implementation on January 1st, like the first payment. What is that? Yeah, like what is?
That was what they were talking about.
Obviously, okay.
Yeah. And I asked us about that. They know that all these agreements have to be put into place before they can actually start the migration and then.
Yeah, we haven't started the project. The project manager keeps calling. We've been holding them off until, Chris and I have been working together with the legalese and so forth.
That's fine.
I just had one question regarding the agreement on number 6 on termination of agreement. I was wondering if we should also put language in there relative to, they can terminate, obviously, along with 30-day prior written notice or some time frame to give them.
Yeah, we can add that in.
Okay.
Provide 30-day notice.
Yeah, 30-day notice prior to terminating the agreement. Thank you.
Kristen, you've obviously had a chance to review all again the standard terms and conditions here. They're quite lengthy, so.
Yeah, they actually agreed to do an amendment. There weren't a lot of terms actually that I was worried about. There was very few, and part of this is to agree to this 2-page amendment to the standard contract. So, but no, most of the terms were, and to be honest, I don't do software agreements too much, so I got some assistance with somebody else in my office. My dad was a patent attorney, so I called him on a couple of things. And, these are pretty standard terms, to be honest. So, no, I was pretty satisfied with the agreement.
Okay. One last question for Captain Dominio. We obviously got these year 1 costs, which are the transition to basically new system hardware, etc. And then it drops down to this $13,394 as a kind of ongoing cost. How does that compare to what we've historically paid for this level of this particular software service?
So how's it compared to what we're currently paying?
Yeah, like the last couple of years.
So it's about $4,000 more.
Okay. Well, it's not in the grand scheme of the police budget. It's not a lot of money, but I was just curious as to what kind of jump we've seen with the new software system.
Yeah, it's about $4,000 more, like I said, but and without breaking down the isolating the cost of that shared and that third-party shared software, that CobraNet they call it, to share the system. So I'd have to look to see what our portion is because the county pays for it, would be a portion of it. But in addition is these on the lower right-hand side, that shared system cost. We don't have some of these. It's just modernizing the software.
And hopefully, if we get a couple more PDs on board, it will reduce over time as well. So, thank you.
Okay. So, is there a motion to approve the intergovernmental cooperation agreement between?
I'd like to also say that it's going to be amended to on that motion. It's going to be amended to add the comment that I made regarding.
Yeah, in order to approve the agreement, you actually have to approve a resolution. So there's a statute called the Intergovernmental Cooperation Act, and that law requires that any time municipalities or governments cooperate in the performance of their governmental duties, it's approved through a resolution or an ordinance. So that's why I had to do a resolution that says you're authorized to enter the intergovernmental agreement. And then the other thing is if the this agreement to grant permission to allow access, that's actually for the other municipalities to sign. You don't need to approve that. Actually, I don't know if you're a signatory to that. You might be. But the other thing that's not on the memorandum is that you're also agreeing to the Amendment 1, which addresses the concerns that I had with the master agreement. So that would sort of all be in one motion.
Can it?
Yeah,
all be in
absolutely.
One motion?
Yep.
Okay. So,
you could just say so moved, to be honest.
Nate, do you want to make that amended motion?
I'll make that amended motion.
Okay, thanks, Nate. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great, thanks, John. Is there any comment from the public on this motion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, Captain. Moving on to item number 8, which is the discussion and possible certification of qualifying volunteers for West Goshen Township's Volunteer Service Tax Credit Program pursuant to Chapter 74, Article 5 of the West Goshen Township Code of Ordinances. We adopted this program last January, and I think per our ordinance, we have to certify the list of qualifying volunteers by March 1st.
That is correct.
Okay, so Mr. Bayshore provided the board with documentation listing these volunteers from the Westchester Fire Department, Good Fellowship, and the Goshen Fire Company. And the total eligible volunteers is 36, which I understand is an increase from last year.
That's correct, about a nine-member increase.
Okay, which is positive. There were a couple of issues though, so from what I understand, we're waiting on the Act 182 self-certification from Goshen Fire.
They actually provided those last night.
They did.
So we do have them and they are in order.
Okay, great. And then we have one other issue with someone from the Westchester Fire Department who's eligible for the tax credit because they just purchased a home in the township, but if the settlement date was after the January 15th deadline, so the board has to consider whether to honor that tonight. And we have the ability to do that, right?
Yes.
And we've done that before.
I believe this occurred last year. I don't remember the individual's name, but it is indicated on the item on the list that was received on January 23rd. I spoke with Fire Chief Mark Scanlon and advised him to have the individual fill out the form and submit an updated form, and I would present it to the board for consideration.
Okay. Are these lists public?
Thank you.
Are these lists of qualifying volunteers public?
They are.
Okay.
So it is Nicholas, the addition is Nicholas Clark.
Right.
And I think he closed 2 days after the 15th deadline on his house.
All right, so are there any comments or questions by the board? Are we all pretty much on the same page? So we got the Act 182 self-certification, so that's taken care of. How do you feel about honoring the volunteer whose house settled after the date?
No problem.
I have no problem.
No problem.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to certify the list of qualifying volunteers for the Township's Volunteer Service Tax Credit Program for the 3 companies.
All right, thanks, Sean.
I'll second that motion.
All right, thanks, Tina. Is there any public comment?
Do we have to vote on the person who settled on their home?
I would just
After.
say amend the motion to include Nicholas Clark.
Right, so I'll amend the motion to include the list of volunteers from Chester Fire Department that was listed on January the 23rd.
Okay, do you want to get back to Mark, or you want me to get back to him on?
I'm going to follow up with all the companies tomorrow.
Okay, and you'll know that
Okay. Yep. I'll let Mark
the
know.
additional
All
one.
right, do you second the amended motion, Tina?
Yes, I do second that
All right,
motion.
John, did you have a
Yeah,
comment?
just a couple of questions. We had some discussion last year with Ms. Green, who's our real estate billing person. What we did last year, I believe, they actually paid the real estate tax, but then they were reimbursed. I think this year we're talking about doing it somewhat differently, not just issuing real estate bills. Is this correct?
We're still going to issue them real estate bills. Kim and I talked about that. We can't go forward with the plan that we
We
discussed.
can't do that?
No, we can't go forward with that plan. So we're going to issue them bills. We actually did have, and I won't say who, we did have one member who just did not pay their taxes, and they're going to go forward through the collection process. So they do have to pay, and then we'll issue them a refund on receipt of payment.
What's the reason again why we just can't? I believe we were doing that for veterans, that we weren't issuing a tax bill.
The county does that for veterans, not the township.
And why could we not do what they're doing?
Well, you also have a situation where when they're exempt from, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, and they're exempt from like all 3 levels of taxes, and the school district hasn't adopted something like this. So if we have them listed, if we try to get them listed as exempt and not send them a tax bill, because they get exempted on the county tax records, that's what we base our bills off of, they aren't technically exempt from school district taxes, because the school district doesn't have a program like this. So the only way that we can really do this is they pay their bill, we certify that they paid their bill, and then we issue them a refund later on. And we budget. I mean, this is going to exceed what we budgeted because it's grown from the previous year, but we budget for the reimbursement.
Okay. We just thought we would have just saved the step here, that's all.
We did, and it would make things a lot easier, but as Kim and I talked about it, we kind of made
Hey,
the
this is
determination.
going to make things easy, you know?
All right, so we have a motion and a second, and all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay.
And you were, just a side note again, you were the instrument that got everybody else involved. Everybody thought we were the only one that didn't do
Oh,
it.
no.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, moving on to item number 9, which is the discussion and possible appointment of the steering committee for the development of the Township's Park, Recreation, and Open Space Plan. And so just as a brief summary, last year, Mr. Bayshore and Mr. Ken Lear submitted a grant application for funding through the Chester County Vision Partnership Program, and they were successful in obtaining that grant to be used toward the development of a park, recreation, and open space plan. Subsequently, a group of representatives from the board, the Park and Rec Committee, and staff conducted interviews of potential consultants, and the board ultimately awarded the project to Tool Recreation Planning. So tonight, our charge is to appoint members to the steering committee that will oversee this project. Is there anything else you'd like to share on that, Chris?
No, Madam Chair. The individuals that are before the board this evening have all been discussed with their respective bodies.
Okay, so the individuals being considered for appointment of the steering committee include Jerry Napachek, Allison Chiffone, and Ed Smith from the Park and Recreation Board. Myself, Ashley Gagne, and Tina Marie Smith from the Board of Supervisors. Carrie Martin, Alessandra Belwar from the Planning Commission, Melanie Vile and Susan Charks from the Sustainability Advisory Committee, and Chris Bayshore, Ken Lear, and Doreen McLean from the Township staff. So are there any questions or comments on the appointment of these individuals to the steering committee?
I'll make the motion to appoint the list you just read to the steering committee.
I'll second that.
Okay, thanks very much. Is there any public comment or questions on the motion? No? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. That's a good catch. Okay.
You're not going to get paid for being on that committee. That's not
Okay. Moving on to item number 10, which is the discussion and possible appointment of Renee Maddie to the Sustainability Advisory Committee. Myself, Ms. Smith, and Mr. Bayshore had the opportunity to meet Ms. Maddie at the last Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting in January. We currently have 2 vacancies on the committee, and Ms. Maddie's background in the natural sciences and her expertise in the field of chemistry, I believe, speak volumes to her expertise and her qualifications to be a member of the committee. But she's also really passionate, and she was really engaging and asked lots of questions at the last meeting. We got a really good feeling from her, and she seems very interested. So the Sustainability Advisory Committee formally recommended to the board that we appoint Ms. Maddie to the SAC with a term expiring on January 1st, 2026. And so I will open it up for questions or comments from the board on this appointment.
Well, I know Miss Maddie, she's a neighbor of mine, lives on my street, and I'm very happy that I asked her to consider being involved with the Township Sustainability Committee. So I would like to make the motion to appoint Miss Maddie to the SAC.
Yes, thank you for your recruitment, Sean. I truly appreciate that. Okay. I'm sorry, who seconded?
I
Second.
No, I think you beat you to it. Thanks, Nate. Any public comment on the appointment? Hearing none? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And I'll just note for the board that we do have an application that I sent to the SAC for the second vacancy that's open right now.
Excellent. That's really good. Okay, moving on to item number 11, which is the discussion and possible approval of a request from the Sustainability Advisory Committee to prohibit the use of neonicotinoids on property owned by West Goshen Township. I know we have a member of the Sustainability Advisory Committee in attendance tonight, Mr. Henry Alexander, but just as a brief summary, the neonicotinoids, or the neonics, are a class of insecticide that, although they were once considered safe for vertebrates, have actually been proven to be harmful and even lethal to some species. And Dr. Melanie Vile is the one who submitted the letter to the board. She's an ecologist at Westchester University, and she's also the vice chair of the Sustainability Committee. And the letter that she included that's in this packet describes some of the properties and effects of the neonicotinoids in greater detail. But the question for tonight is whether the board would like to take official action in banning the use of the insecticides containing the neonics on township-owned property. Chris, would you like to add anything?
I will just add that, so this is a policy decision for the board as it relates to property owned by the municipality. I did speak with, when this discussion started with the SAC, I did speak with Doreen regarding if we, one, utilize these products in-house and what it would take for our vendors to switch. We were provided with a list from the SAC, and we do not use these products in-house. However, we do have vendors who utilize them for field treatments. Ms. McLean spoke with our vendor, and they are more than happy to switch products at the township's request. There would be some additional cost. The estimate was about $4,000, and Ms. McLean did factor that into her 2024 budget projections desired by the board to move in this direction and in anticipation of this coming to fruition.
Okay, thanks. So it is included, I guess, somewhat in the budget?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from the board on this?
I have a couple of questions. So the vendors that would no longer use these products, would they substitute them for older insecticides, which are maybe just as bad, but are still actually approved for use?
I can't answer that question. My assumption is it would be something safer, but I can't answer that question. I would hope not.
Maybe we make that as part of the stipulation in our contracts with them.
Unless we have the SAC determine what products are acceptable, then tell the vendors that we would ask to do the work, but these are the list of approved township products. I think that's the only way to do it.
Well, I think they already did do that. They attached a list.
I don't know that that's what that is it?
It was a
Yeah.
list of products that
Those contain the neonics.
They contain it, so we just have to submit that list to them and make sure.
But if you don't use these, there are a host of other products which may be older and just as bad in terms of their impact on the environment, but are still legally able to be used. And what we don't want to do is swap this for something that may be as bad or worse.
No, I see your point, John.
Or do we put the onus on them to ensure?
Well, no, because there's no, it's not like we have any kind of list or ordinance of approved products that they're only allowed to use on township property. So they might just revert to something different, but we have no idea what's in it. I mean, yeah, it wouldn't have the neonics in it, but it could have something else in it.
I mean, I think tonight we can approve this, and, you know, and then ask the SAC to work on a list of acceptable products.
Okay.
Is there a standard out there, you know, for insecticides that they could subscribe to?
That's a good question.
The question was asked as to what the alternatives would be, and the SAC did not get that far in determining what the alternatives would be. But I think that's a fair question, and perhaps needs to be considered a bit more. One thing I noticed over my lifetime is that the buildup of insects on the windshield has decreased decade by decade, and there has been a collapse in the amount of insect life in the United States and in Europe. And this is something that we need to pay more attention to and figure what to do. Neonicotinoids are very aggressive in wiping out all insects that come into contact with them. And that is something that we need to look at very carefully. But at the same time, and I agree, we should consider what the alternatives are.
Well, would the board be more comfortable with a list of those alternatives before approving this or what?
I think we can approve this tonight and just ask, obviously the vendor's got some idea what they're going to use because they told you what the additional costs would be. We should just ask for Doreen
Right, but
to
what
get
if they
those lists.
contain something even?
But I don't think I mean, we've got time, it's the middle of winter, I don't think this spring, Doreen's not bringing anybody in to do a particular product right now, so.
Okay.
I mean, if you want, that's my view, if you want to hold off until we get the full picture, that's fine too, but.
Would it make any sense to advertise the community forum on the hazards of these chemicals?
Sure, yeah.
The SAC could do an e-news article about it.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's what they were planning to do for February.
Yeah, I think that's,
February or
yeah.
March.
I have one other question related to this. Mike sometimes needs to bring in a vendor to do treatment for the fly problem around the trickling filters at the sewer plant. So I don't know, that might be a specific impact that Doreen might not be aware of, I don't know. But we should check
Probably
it.
wasn't factored in, but I can speak.
Yeah, just so we know what product's being used there.
That land is owned by, that land, is the authority the official owner of that land?
I don't think so, I think it's the township.
Yeah, but that's the rest, there's the township and the
Township,
township.
I believe, yeah.
The township does all the work.
Yeah.
But the sewer might own the land, Sean. The only reason I say that is
It
all
might be
the
the-
pipes and things are owned, and all the easements go to the authority.
Well, pump stations are all owned by the sewer authority, so it might be that
It
this
might
is
be,
owned by the
yeah, it
authority.
might be.
Okay, so is there a motion then to approve the prohibition of neonicotinoids in insecticides used on township-owned property?
Since I suggested that we could do that tonight, I will make that motion.
Thanks. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, thanks, Tina. Is there any public comment? Yes, Steph?
So we don't use these at all?
No, we, in-house, we don't use the products that were listed, but we have vendors who do. So the action from the board would be, telling our vendors, we don't want to use these products.
So the vendors use them elsewhere, but not here?
If we can't regulate what they do outside of our jurisdiction and outside of property that we own.
Okay, so they're not using them now?
They are using
They
them.
are
yeah.
using them.
For field treatments.
Here?
Here,
Yes.
our fields, sometimes Doreen doesn't do the application with her team, but we call in a vendor who will do field treatments to the township property with these products. So you're saying the vendors can use an alternative product.
Maybe it would be prudent to see what an alternative would be before passing it and see what it costs.
Or if the cost will increase.
Yeah, Doreen did research on the ability to switch. So when this started getting discussed with the SAC, I talked to Doreen about like, do we use these products in-house? Do we have vendors who utilize them? And if they switch, what the cost would be. And Doreen did that research. And what came back was, yes, we have vendors who use them, and they are more than happy to switch products that don't contain, nicks, and it would be they would increase the cost by about $4,000. And she, as I said, she factored that into her budget that was presented to the board in the fall.
Okay, so it's not possible to use an alternative that's deemed safer for not an increased cost?
Based on the conversations now.
Well, I would suggest the SAC looks at the list of proposed new products that the vendors have, and also just double check what Doreen is using today.
Oh, well.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. So good news to bring back to the Sustainability Committee. Okay, moving on to item 12, approval of the meeting minutes from December 19th, 2023 and January 2nd, 2024. Are there any questions, comments, amendments to the meeting minutes?
I have one.
Okay.
On January 2nd, the first line, it looks like it was just copied and pasted. The regular monthly meeting of the Board of Supervisors of the West Goshen Township was called to order by Chair Sean Walsh at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, December 19th, but the meeting took place on January 2nd.
I will change that.
Thank you, Nate.
We were just checking you to make sure you read them.
Yeah.
Good job.
There you go.
Good job.
I have one other correction on actually two, I'm sorry, on page 3 of December 19. It's the 5th paragraph from the bottom. Mr. Walsh stated that before instead of the B before the B.
Which page was it, Mr. Walsh?
Page 3, 5th paragraph up from the bottom. Mr. Walsh stated that before the board.
Okay.
And then one other one on page 6. 4th paragraph up from the bottom, 2nd sentence, Ms. Camp recommended, should say.
Page 6, you said.
Question 1 or 2.
Oh, geez.
These are just minor typos.
Okay.
Can I just send it to you in an email? I mean, these are just minor corrections.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Instead of going through all this.
That's fine.
Okay.
So, Ms. Camp.
Well, I'll just CC you with this.
Okay, thanks, John. Is there a motion then to approve the meeting minutes
I'll make the motion.
as amended by the comments? Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Nate. Any public comment? No? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And finally, item number 13, approval of the bills to be paid. Are there any questions or comments by the board on the bills?
No.
I noticed there were a couple of payments made to electrical contractors doing the EV charging station infrastructure project. Can you give us an idea what percent completion that is?
So they have finished the interior work and they have completed I think we've done 3 payment releases. They've completed the interior work in building C. I don't think they have finished the work in the police department building. I don't believe that's happened yet. They are working on the exterior work for the police department. If you go out to the side where the command staff parks, that sidewalk is all ripped up right now. They're installing the conduit, and they've completed the conduit install and the new sidewalk back behind the building A, installed the bollards, stubs, everything.
Any issues with the construction as it's progressing?
We can discuss that privately.
Okay. And final completion, when do you anticipate that would be?
I don't have a final completion date on the top of my head. We were targeting an end of January completion. However, with the weather events that occurred in the middle of the month, that kind of set things back, and there were a couple other things that set it back a little bit. So maybe late February, if I can.
Okay.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the bills?
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Sean. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Nate. Is there any public comment on the bills? Hearing none. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And finally, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Yes, Doug?
I just have one quick question. This might be a dumb question, but why do we put insecticides on our fields?
To kill grubs and pests.
Like the ball fields and stuff?
It's standard.
I thought we just cut the grass. I mean, I didn't know we.
So we'll do field treatments. Yep, that's how.
All right, so I have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second. Thanks. All in favor? Aye.